Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live video. Today it's Sunday, it's the 19th of January 2024, and thanks you guys for tuning in. I hope you're having an enjoyable weekend, and or at least a relaxing one. Anyway, today I have a very light review to do, not a very complex concept or a lot of detail that has to go into what is essentially a portable monitor that has two screens that can be powered by one cable. And it can do everything two monitors can do. I mean, it's not really any more complicated than that. When we get into the details as to what frequency it can operate at or what resolutions it supports, yes, it has speakers, little tiny things. We're not tearing it down. There's no upgrades to do on a portable screen. And what a unique solution that Minisforum has come out here with this idea that instead of selling you two portable screens, they can sell you one that are built in together. And they can even be set up right, sort of like this. If you had an ebook reader, you could actually have a little digital book if you set the pages of your book in portrait mode. So it's really neat. It's got a metal, if you notice back here, not that foldable stand that I struggled with, a metal stand, which is what I like. I have never unboxed this before, so we'll see how to hook it up and how it all works here during today's show. And then I thought I might demonstrate the monitor itself along with giving you a basic on just networking your home computers. It's easy enough when you want to copy a file from this computer over to that computer. You put it on a flash drive and you walk it over there and you plug the flash drive in, you copy the files back off. We used to call that the sneaker net. But if you're already connected to the internet with both machines, and the reason why I keep explaining over and over how dangerous the internet is that if your computer can connect to the internet, then at least in theory, your computer can connect to any other computer anywhere in the world connected to the internet. So sometimes people ask, well, can this computer connect to that one on the internet? Can I share files between my Mac and my Linux and my Windows? If it gets internet, then it should be able to transfer files. That's what makes the internet so dangerous. With literally any computer that can connect to the internet, even a device, it's possible to send files to your refrigerator if your refrigerator connects to the internet. So just bear that in mind. The answer is always yes, and that's why security is something that we really focus in on here because of how easy it can be. But out of the box, your new computer, whether you built it yourself and did a clean install of Windows, or you bought a pre-installed system integrated build like a Dell or an HP, these system integrators that build machines and sell them already configured with Windows, all that stuff by default is turned off for obvious reasons, right? It's obvious. You wouldn't want all that stuff turned on. Or maybe you would, but it should be your decision to make with the default being off so you're not unknowingly making all your data and personal information available to anybody on your network or the internet. And so after we go through hooking this up, we'll utilize it to connect two computers together that are brand new installs that have never been configured for file sharing. And there's a number of steps you've got to decide, such as what am I going to share? How do I want to share it? Do I want it to be read-only? Or do I want the people to be able to modify or delete those files on my computer? Even if that person is you, just sitting at another computer. That's up to you. Do I want to restrict access with a name or password? Or do I just want to let anybody in that's on my network? Or do I want to share these files over the internet, which, we won't get into that today, but we'll talk about just local sharing, enabling yourself to print to any printer in your household that's connected to any computer or network connection. It's all very, very simple, but there are a number of very simple logical steps you've got to take place to lower down and unlock those gates. And they're not just gates for one thing. There's gates for authentication per user. There's gates for which files. There's gates for which folders. There's gates for how much access you allow any of them to get. And there's gates with regards to making sure you're not on a guest network that won't allow this to happen. And also gates, all these security checkpoints that you have to go through. And Windows networking is hard. It isn't. It's super easy. Now, you want to go back to Novell networking, if you want to go back to Banyan Vines, I'll show you some difficult networking. Hello, everybody. Welcome in, and a super shout out. Thank you to our friend Mark Gaines, who sends a $25 Amazon gift card here just prior to the show. Also, Planet Cryos contributing $5. He said, I'll kick us off. When you're in the background while I work. All right, you know what? I'm good with that. Peter Laycock, our friend Buster, joining us from Scotland. Peter contributes 10 pounds. He says, hello, Carrie and Mara and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh, Scotland, right now, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius. It's a little chilly. Okay. A little warmer over here. Welcome in. Hobo Naylor says hello. Mark Baggett joins us. 3D Everything and Wayne Ellison. Richard DeFries, Doman 2000, Patrick T, and Patrick Manny, all joining us in the chat. If you're watching this video live this Sunday, the 19th of January, if you're a kind person, come on in. Come on in. You're invited. If you're not a kind person, if you don't have nice things to say, stay away. It's really simple. You will attract what you put out there to the universe. So if you want to put out negativity, you're going to get some in return. So whatever it is you want to receive from other people, I can guarantee in general this is how life works, but especially in our chat room, you'll receive it back tenfold. So if you're just watching, you've never communicated in a live chat before with strangers all over the world online, these strangers are all friendly and supportive individuals. And if you consider yourself to be a friendly and supportive individual, you belong here. And we'd love for you to join us. Just pop into the chat and say hello. And you don't have to do anything more than that. It doesn't matter how socially awkward you might feel, whether you're introverted, it doesn't matter. Just say hello and just watch what happens. On the other hand, be a jerk and don't blink because it'll happen quick. You'll be out. So anyway, we always encourage the growth of this community, and that only can occur through people being kind to one another. Otherwise, it can self-destruct and implode from within. And I will do what I can and everything in my power to protect this community from those who, I don't know, for no reason whatsoever want to destroy it. So we don't have any hesitation, and we don't have any guilt about removing people who are in such a state of mind they're not really making very sustainable decisions. Like if you did that in real life, you'd probably be beaten. But anyway, if you're kind, please jump into our chat room. And I think you're really going to feel at home. You're going to feel welcomed and invited, and you're going to want to come back again. All right. Hello, everybody. I just see a lot of names. I'm sorry I'm not mentioning everybody. I see Gary Bickle and John Lewis and Ghostly Lurker and Mecca Cameron all joining us. So thanks, you guys, for hanging out with us today. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how Minisforum promotes this monitor. A lot of times, I personally feel like reviews these days for a lot of electronic stuff are completely pointless. Now, for those of you that are regular here, you've heard me talk about this before, but this is for the benefit of the folks that are new here. And that is, the device isn't going to work any better than the manufacturer says it's going to work. It really doesn't matter what paces we put it through. Whether it's a video card, your frames per second are going to be exactly in line with what that video card can do. You know, assuming you've got the right support, meaning power supply and CPU and everything that video card needs. We already know from the manufacturer the best it can do. If we're looking at a Wi-Fi router, we don't have to wonder how good is it. I mean, we know everything about it based on just the sales page. There's the best range you can get under the best circumstances using the best latest wireless devices. What does that have to do with you? You may not be using all the best and latest wireless devices. Your building may not be the best environment for a wireless radio signal. So when the manufacturers tell you this is the best it could do, you won't get any better than what's on the box. On the other hand, when a reviewer reviews it, they may not get what's on the box because their environment and radio signals may not be ideal, depending on how, just a lot of variables, the congestion, the number of devices, the type of devices that they're connecting, how they're testing it, and where their values are. So even the testing valuation itself is up for interpretation. So essentially, I personally find a lot of the reviews pointless. It's like, here's what the product looks like. Maybe you get some idea of scale. Here's what the configuration looks like, but then that usually changes anyway with firmware updates, so that's even very perishable information in a lot of cases. And sometimes there are very critical updates that come out as a vulnerability is found or some new feature is added. And the person's not going to go back and edit that review, but that review just stays up forever and ever and ever. Therefore, doing the exact opposite, where instead of informing you more information about the product, which they rarely ever do, again, that's all on the product page these days, but instead they're giving you all outdated information. You don't know it's outdated. And then that makes it more difficult. It actually causes more harm than good if you are making your purchase decision based on a review. So do please pay attention to when the video you're watching was posted. There are videos here on YouTube that are 15, 16 years old, and there are products that are still being sold today that were sold 5 and 6 years ago. And how we measured and evaluated things 5 or 6 years ago, be it a router or even a computer case, has changed. What we consider normal and what we expect from a modern computer case today would be an unfair expectation on a case built 5 or 6 years ago. And since we don't have a crystal ball, none of us do, when you watch those videos for 5 or 6 years ago and people say it's great, would they still say it's great today at the price and at the standards that a similar product would be after a few years of evolution? Tech moves pretty quickly. So while they're interesting and they might be entertaining, I don't know how much value they really hold, other than read the reviews online from people who've actually bought it versus a content creator or an influencer. See what the overall opinion is. As long as more than 50% are happy, it's probably okay. If 100% are happy, it probably doesn't have very many reviews. There's some real nutcases out there. For as much as you evaluate the product, I wish the products could evaluate the consumers, because there's so many consumers out there that don't have a clue what they're doing, and they blame the product for their own ignorance and lack of experience and understanding, that they leave a negative review blaming the product. Wouldn't it be great if we could rate the reviewers? At least that way we'd have some measure of how valuable that information from that reviewer is. Just like a movie critic. There might be, back in the day, Siskel and Ebert, you might have preferred Siskel's reviews over Ebert's, or the other way around, or neither of them, or both of them. But in your own mind, when you'd watch them, you had a favorite. I promise you had a favorite. But is that the case with other types of reviews? Like that was just movie reviews or critiques. What about product reviews? You might like a specific content creator. They might be very likable. They might have great filming techniques and great editing techniques and great script writing and on-camera speaking presence. What has that got to do with the product? So I encourage each and every one of you to take your own responsibility, to do your own research. And when it comes to unique products, and when I say unique, I mean unique as of January 19th, 2025, because we don't know how commonplace what we're looking at that's innovative today becomes tomorrow. For that reason, that makes this product a little bit special. Having 2 monitors that are portable, that can both run off one single cable that provides both signals to both monitors and power to the monitor, is pretty incredible. And the fact that it's not sitting on your desk weighing 20 pounds, or that you have to have a bunch of screws and assembly. It's pretty much, as I understand it, ready to use out of the box. So this presumes that you have a computer that has USB Type-C with power delivery, so you can power the monitor as well as provide the video signal. But if you don't, it still has backwards compatibility with a regular AC power adapter along with HDMI input. So either way, you're okay. It's just you have the old-fashioned way of hooking up a monitor and the new way. And what they've done is they've just doubled that capacity with that same single wire, that same simple setup, but now with 2 monitors. Because before, you'd need at least 2 monitors to do this, and that would need 2 cables, right? So to be able to put both in one package makes the setup a lot easier. And if you're portable, there's a reason why you're portable. You don't want to sit there and have to hook up a bunch of wires for wherever it is you're traveling to or going from place to place every single time you get there, and then tear it all down and then take it all out. This makes it much, much easier. It can be one cable. You can use a mini PC, like we'll use the Minisforum, the UN MDSA156 that we reviewed the other day. I think it'll do this. We'll find out. Either way, even if you still have to hook up a power cable and an HDMI cable, I mean, so it's one additional cable. It's just finding the power outlet, etc. Obviously, we're going to have to find a power outlet for this guy. On the other hand, if this were plugged into a laptop, you could be running 100% off the laptop battery, although the laptop battery life would be reduced, you know, with the power consumption this will take, and how much battery that will consume depends on the laptop. But, you know, there's all these caveats and things that are, to me, common sense, but certainly things to consider if you're looking for a particular tool, as I would consider this, that you might need to do something in your life. In most cases, this would be used in a work environment where, well, let's just look at the Minisforum page and see how they promote it. If I come over here, we have a link in our chat, or not in our chat, we have a link in our video notes for this screen at Minisforum. And we're going to see how Minisforum describes this, because I assure you, no reviewer is going to be more accurate than what you see right here. Direct from the manufacturer is $231. This one shows a US power adapter, because they have different power adapters available to different countries that they ship in. Here's an example of how someone might use this with a mini PC. You'll see there's one cable coming out of the mini PC and then going into the monitor. You're still going to need power, right? So the mini PC still needs power. This is a little deceptive in the sense that there should be power coming into the mini PC and then a single USB-C cable coming out of the mini PC and into the monitor. Companies like to do this with televisions and other things that plug in where they just don't show you the cables. It's definitely something to pay attention to, especially if you're watching. You don't see it as much these days, but there were shows where bands would come on and play, and if you looked closely, none of their instruments were plugged in. It'd be like Pet Shop Boys would have a keyboard with no power cable. I mean, not even a power cable, just a keyboard together. Clearly, they're lip syncing. So anyway, when you consider the monitor on a laptop being monitor 1, this gives you an additional 2, right? So then you can have, what's the word? Like an ultra wide screen. On the other hand, taking a look at the monitor this way, we've got a vertical, or I guess this would be a horizontal representation of one monitor over the other monitor, being that this would be a two monitor display. Okay, and the point that they're trying to make, I think, in this image isn't that this is how it would be used in a triple monitor display, because that's not how you would use it. We'll talk more about that. This is more about the angle of viewing, because whenever you have more than one monitor, the second or third or fourth monitor, anything more than number 1, will be off at an angle. Only the first monitor, or only one of those monitors, will be dead on to your eyes and straight on, and the others will be at some sort of an angle, whether it's an angle up, down, left, or right. The monitor supports 1920 by 1080. This is helping keep the price down by keeping it away from those 4K prices. It's a 15.6-inch monitor, and there's 2 of them. They're exactly the same, of course. And in some examples of how this monitor could be used, you could be sitting at a desk with a customer at the other side of your desk, and so you can show them the same screen that you're seeing. You could use it personally. You can use it as a normal screen. I'm trying to figure out what they're doing here. They're saying here's the benefits of the dual screen versus a normal screen. So a normal screen is just yours. There's no way really for you to share it other than if you physically grab it, pick it up, and turn it around, and then you can't see it, right? So I guess that's what their example is here. Again, there's no script here. Everything is live. And usually these marketing materials are pretty clear. Just took me a minute to get on board with what we're doing here. If you're traveling with a portable monitor anyway, this gives you twice as much screen real estate with pretty much the same. If you want to call it a burden to carry around a monitor, it's not much more of a burden, really, if even noticeable, to carry around 2 that are connected together. Of course, it bends in many different ways, so you don't have to bend your neck or your body to accompany that, so it's more ergonomic. And somehow it's more comfortable for reading and typing, which kind of goes up to the top one, I think. Oh, I guess what they're saying is if the monitors are vertical, looking up is more comfortable than having to look left and right and out of your peripheral vision. I think that's what they're saying. Okay, it says it features a 15.6-inch large displays. That's equivalent to 23.8 inches. It's an IPS screen with 178-degree wide viewing angle technology and ultra-slim bezels, delivering a revolutionary immersive visual experience. It does support triple screen collaboration for efficient work, meaning you can enjoy simultaneous display across 3 screens, eliminating the need to keep switching windows. Effortlessly switch between full screen and split screen views, enabling multitasking for mobile work, online classes, stock trading, video editing, and entertainment, all at the same time. Again, here's an example of how somebody might be talking in a presentation or to a client, and they want them both to see the same screen when they're on opposite sides of the desk. Having the stand hooked up to your laptop, you just set it off to the side. Your right or your left doesn't matter. So you've got not only your laptop screen, but the 2 additional screens giving you a triple screen display, depending on what your needs are. The monitors do have speakers built in. It weighs 2.2 pounds, it's 0.32 of an inch thick, and it is a fine ceramic sandblasting finish. There's some examples of them plugging it in with the single cable, how it might be utilized in work, meetings, stock analysis, even in gaming, travel, and online courses. Of course, the screens fold up. That makes them more portable, and they can bend completely straight or fold into a V shape or close up like a book. And they can be turned into portrait mode, which they call reading mode, so it looks like a giant book. And of course, how you use it, these are just some examples. It is not limited to all the different creative ways somebody might use this as one big screen, such as in this example, or 2 separate screens. Or if you want to extend, trying to figure out what this says, splice off, computer extend on. Oh, I see. I think they're saying you can turn your monitor off on your computer or just have this as your own monitor and then have screen 1 and screen 2. And of course, you can always move 2 to the top and 1 to the bottom. You can move these around. And then over here, this is extended mode, where basically it looks like we're just taking one of the screens and stretching it out to be like one large second monitor. I don't know why they're calling it 3, but maybe that's just example number 3. The product name is the MDSA156. It's got 1,000:1 contrast ratio. The resolution, again, it's going to be HD, 1920 by 1080, and it's 16:9 aspect ratio. It's got an anti-glare coating on it, so don't use any glass cleaners. When you clean your monitor or your TV at home, just use a microfiber cloth. I usually dampen one corner of it, and I use the rest of the dry microfiber cloth to wipe it down. That's all you should need. The reason you don't use Windex or other alcohol-based screen cleaners is they can take the anti-glare coating off of your laptop, your television, or your monitor. It's always been that way, going all the way back. Same advice we've been given for years. Again, we have some operating environment testing, shipping weight, kilogram weight. We've got accessories in the box as a Type-C full function cable, and then there's a Type-C, just a charging cable. That's all the basic. Basically, there's 2 types of USB cables. Some are just chargers, and others will charge as well as transfer data. Obviously, if we're going to show this video, if we're going to show video on the monitor, that's considered data. It also includes an HDMI cable, so if you want to run from the back of a computer that has HDMI to the back of the monitor, with a separate power adapter that's included to power the monitor. That's an option, and you would use one or the other basically. And then of course it's got a user manual. This is a brand new product. It hasn't got any reviews yet, so we're one of the early ones to take a look at it here. Our thanks, of course, to our friends at Minisforum, who've been very courteous to us, very thoughtful in allowing us to be one of the first people to review these brand new and innovative products for them. And it's why I like working with them so much. If they're just making the same product over and over again, it doesn't excite me. And if I'm not excited, I really don't want to do it. Being self-employed, that's a benefit that I have. So while I may not be getting rich, I absolutely get to do what I want to do. And that, for me, is more preferable, to do a job I enjoy and I'm genuinely interested in, versus drudging, into work, trudging into work, another day at the office, another day of paperwork, stamping the paperwork. That's the thing that's more important. I don't want to get stuck in that. So I really enjoy the opportunity to work with new products, especially from a manufacturer I'm familiar with and I trust. I'm not here to sell it to you. I just want to introduce you to it, let you know it exists. At that point, you guys can decide if that's something you could see beneficial, or Minisforum needs to, do their part as far as sales goes to make this product enticing, whether that's price or functionality. Nothing I can do about that, right? That's on them. So that's the point of today's video. And most of my videos are just introducing you to the ideas and to let you know what's available at about what price. And some of this stuff is going to suit you guys perfectly, and some of this stuff, you would have no use for. And that's the way it goes. That's why I try to have as much variety as possible. So if things I show in one video don't really appeal to you or your values, keep watching, because we have such a variety of content, from PC builds to routers and networking and monitors and mini PCs, et cetera, that hopefully there's a little something in there for everyone. If there's something in particular you want to see, if we can do it, if it's part of our wheelhouse, we'd certainly be happy to accommodate if we can. People ask things about products we don't review, Linux, home-built NASs, hobbyist activities. We don't cover that sort of stuff. There is some bleed over, a little bit of overlap, but overall, it's got to think of it as a way a computer business operates, in providing solutions to customers, upgrades, repairs, PCs, mini PCs, laptops, screens, networking, NASs. We do all of that. I do all of that in my business professionally. And when I make these videos, it's just to turn the camera on and show you the difference from the bulk of content from enthusiasts here on YouTube that can do whatever they want just for fun. We do it because it's fun for me, but it's even more fun when it means something, when it means somebody's business is going to be more profitable and they're going to grow. Because if that business grows and they're happy with me, then my business grows, because they'll be calling more, right? They'll be saying, I need another computer. I'm hiring more employees. I need more advanced networking. The network's got to be upgraded. I love that. I love to see my customers succeed. On the other hand, if you're just sitting there at home and you're just playing around, just biding your time, that's fine too. And that's what the bulk of the enthusiast channels are all about. Nothing wrong with it, but there is a difference behind why we do what we do. And I wish there were more real IT staff making content here on YouTube. And there are others, but we don't make up but this much of technical content on YouTube. It is mostly by consumers for consumers, right? There's not a lot of businesses that come onto YouTube looking to fix their own stuff. In fact, if you were starting your own IT business, YouTube is not the place to advertise. Anybody looking for an IT person for their company isn't going to be shopping YouTube. They might do a Google search, in which case you'd want a website. That's the modern yellow pages. If you don't have a website, then you need to get on your feet and start knocking on doors and handing out business cards and introducing yourself to companies and saying, hey, I don't know if you're happy with your current IT person or if you even have one, but I've been doing this so many years, blah, blah, blah. I got a client right next door, if such is the case. And, if you don't need me today, just hold my card, Because if the person you're using becomes unreliable or anything should change, I'll be your backup guy. Don't lose my card. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your time. Move on to the next business. You're going to get 99 no. Well, you probably get at least 50 no's, or we'll think about it and get back to you. But you have to keep doing that in order to just get one. Then if you get that one, you hold on to it with both hands, because it's really hard to acquire customers. It's a very competitive market. But if they're happy with you, your professionalism, you're clean and hygienic, you charge a fair rate, you're responsive and clear, you don't give them any attitude or act like, what do you want now? You know what I mean? Give them a reason to keep you around. Then the question is, how many more of those can you do before you have to hire somebody to help you and your business starts growing? But essentially, my business has been word of mouth. It's just been one client talking to another client. When I work with an attorney, they talk to other attorneys. Inevitably, the whole computer thing comes up. When I talk to a dentist or I talk to an accountant, they talk to other dentists and accountants. And inevitably, this subject matter comes up. Same with real estate agents. How did you get your computer to do that? I got a guy. What's the guy's name? Oh, that's Kerry Holzman. Do you have his number? That is a great way to get business, because you're not maintaining a website. You are not knocking on doors. You keep those customers happy, and your referrals and your repeat customers, it happens on its own, which is much cheaper to maintain than just knocking on doors. But you can also do both. So yeah, websites are usually where businesses are looking for IT solutions, not on YouTube. And consumers are usually looking on YouTube and not on websites, because they don't want to spend the money and they want to try and figure it out how to do it themselves. That's just usually the way it is. There's also a little crossover where you have a consumer who works from home. The one that comes to mind is a real estate agent, somebody who may be self-employed, or they might work for a bigger corporation, and then they work remotely from home. And maybe sometimes they have to go to the company or join in on Zoom meetings or things like that. And they're using their home computer, not one provided by the company. If a computer is provided by a company, then the company is the one to call when there's a problem, not some random person online, because the company's got their whole business on the line. So if you have a company computer, then it's the company's responsibility to provide any support or help you need with that computer. And if you were to circumvent that and go around it, you could lose your job. So again, for that reason, YouTube is mostly consumers, but I would still love to see more professional IT staff making actual repair upgrade videos and explaining policies and procedures and why they matter so much in business. And if it matters a lot in business, it should matter to you. The reverse is not true. This is what I learned the hard way. A lot of things businesses did when I first got started in this industry really felt like bureaucracy and overkill. And then I saw some things. And then I saw some things on the consumer side and thought how all of these consumers, 100% of them, would not have gone through all the stress and expense if they had just simply followed what the standard procedure for most corporations are. So that's why I'm so rigid when it comes to these sort of basic rules, is because somebody's livelihood is on the line. And that's mine, right? Because if I do anything that upsets my customers' ability to make a profit, whether it's taking too long, not fixing it right the first time, or charging too much, where's my income going to come from if they don't call me back? Versus if I'm at home playing with a toy and I want to share my toy playing with you, well, that's enthusiast, and that's okay. But there's so many enthusiast videos. It's just, I'm doing my best to provide an alternate to that, just so you as a viewer have a choice. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it sure would be nice if it was more 50-50. Maybe someday we'll get there. In the meantime, let's take a look here, back over to the chat room. Planet Cryos with a $5 super chat says, I want to see Kerry promoting while getting dental work done. Mouth open, drill going, all words are muffled. I think that if you want to talk to people, you need to be understood. So, I think that's going to be very. It would be interesting to see the automated subtitles that YouTube comes up with. Put it in language dental mode. Shamim Kajur renews membership, now a member for 19 months. Shamim says, hello, Carrie. Thank you very much for all the knowledge sharing. I was on holiday. Glad to be back and catch up with all the live videos I've missed. I hope you have a great 2025. Hugs from Sweden. Right on. Thank you, Shamim. Thank you for renewing your membership now for 19 months in a row. And as I mentioned, we've got viewers all over the world, and Sweden, Australia, of course, the US, Canada, the UK, Brazil. See John Lewis joining us from Brazil. Ireland, Scotland, which I suppose are part of the UK, but specifically Ireland, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, Norway, Denmark, Amsterdam. Yeah, I love it. It's fascinating to me. Charlie Purdy with a $10 super chat says, happy Sunday. Right on. Thank you, Charlie. Happy Sunday to you. And thank you for your continued support and generosity. Hopefully I got everybody there. And let's do some unboxing. I see Luke Greenia joining us from Vermont. Says hello here in the chat room. Planet Krause with a $5 super chat says, on a more serious note, thanks for all you do to teach. Well, thank you. You know, not everybody wants to learn. That's frustrating. But, you know, sometimes, and by the way, if you're going to go into this business and anybody questions your ability or your pricing, like I've talked to business owners, and I've done it myself back in the early days. This is just a little business advice. Don't tell your customer, don't tell the potential customer, you're not going to find anybody cheaper than me. You're not going to find anybody better than me. Don't challenge them, because they will dig their heels in and absolutely prove you wrong, because you'll never know the answer. They'll say, okay, like if they think you're too expensive and you go, actually, no, I'm very aggressively priced when you consider I get the job done faster, I save you money, and I do it the first time, you're not winning anybody over. They're gonna, if they didn't believe you before, they're gonna believe you even less now. So if there was a chance they were considering you, you just ruined it. So instead, what I often will tell people, and I've learned this the hard way, is, yeah, shop around. I encourage it. In fact, if you find somebody who's faster, better, cheaper, would you pass their name and number on to me? Because I could use them myself. Sincerely, I don't mean that sarcastically. And, you know, let them go to somebody else. You know what? Maybe you never hear from that customer again. You came in, you gave them an evaluation, an estimate. They didn't like it. Too bad. Sorry it didn't work out. Maybe next time. Don't burn the bridge. Just go, okay, well, I appreciate your time. If you change your mind, you've got my number. Feel free to call anytime. And I'd say about half of the time, about half, maybe a little less than half, you will eventually hear back from that customer as they realize through their own pain, which is time and money, that the person they chose was cheaper and slower for a reason, and things are still broken. They're even more frustrated, and now they're going to call you back. But don't make it an I told you so, because then they're not going to call you back. You just go, how can I help you? Well, you remember that problem I was having? Sure, I remember. Or no, I don't. Remind me. Well, I had this issue and you quoted me this much. I ended up going with somebody cheaper. I really shouldn't have. Give them the reason to explain it to you, rather than you saying to them, well, I warned you, didn't I? Now, if we're in a teaching, like in a classroom, all right, that's more of like a parent-child kind of a situation. That's different. That's not business. That's, you know, kid, I told you not to do it. You did it anyway, and now look what happened. Listen to me next time. That's a different scenario. When you are working for somebody or you're trying to gain their trust or their business, let them fail. If that's what they choose, walk away from it. Don't try to change their mind. Just give them a business card and say, if you change your mind, give me a call anytime. Walk away. And half the time, they're never ever going to call you again. You've got to believe me when I tell you this. Those are not customers you want. Because even if you were able to manipulate your customer's attitude, you will find they are terrible people to work for. They don't pay their bills on time. They demand too much for too little. Trust me, it is in your best interest to get out of there as soon as you can. If you can't get the circumstances and the conditions right, if you have to accommodate to them at no additional pay, but they're just going to make you work harder and stress you out more, politely find a way out. Don't try to change their mind. Don't go, well, you know, if you think I'm too expensive, you could go to somebody who's cheaper, who takes 5 times longer and spend twice as much. Don't do that. Because if you're succeeding, you lose. Because you're going to find a customer who's now got unrealistic expectations of how fast you're going to be intolerant to anything less than that. And these are the people, if there's anybody who doesn't pay their bills on time, these are the ones who do it. And then you'll think, you know, why did I bust my butt so hard, twist their arm to convince them just so I could put myself in this place where now I'm frustrated and angry. I wish I had just let that customer go. And that's why it's okay to just let them just go, hey, you know, it's your business, it's your stuff, it's your money. If you and I aren't a good fit, it's not personal, it's all good. Here's my card if you change your mind. Go knock on the next door. Because for as many people that are going to talk to you that way, there are also many people who, when you show up and hand them their card, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I am so glad you are here. We've been looking for an IT person ever since our other IT guy, you know, fill in the blank. And they usually are pretty bitter about it, and they're looking for a savior, and they didn't know where to look. And you just happen to come in there, and maybe you think, gosh, I hate door-to-door sales. But yet, you just hand-delivered them a solution. You had no idea they were looking for it. And even if they aren't looking for it, it's not a high-pressure sale. It's not like, I need an answer today. I don't want to take up much of your time. I understand you're happy with your IT solution now. But if that should ever change, put my card away. Or if you know anybody, please hand their card, you know, pass my card on to them. I would appreciate it. You're not bothering anybody by doing that. You're just in and you're out. You're making an introduction. If there's interest, I'll tell you more. If there's not interest, maybe there will be tomorrow. Just in case, please take my card. Now, they might throw that card in the garbage. Let them. Let them, because again, that's not a client you would want to take on. Because that's somebody who thinks nothing's ever going to happen, and they're going to be reactive instead of proactive. A smart person will say, you know what? I better hold on to this just in case. Those are the customers you want when they do call you. And that could be 2 years. You get this call from somebody, and they're like, yeah, you stopped by my office a couple of years ago, prior to the pandemic. And we didn't need anybody at that time. But ever since then, everything's gotten terrible, and it's been terrible for about a year. And every day it feels like it's getting worse, and everybody's stressed out, and the morale here is really down. And then it occurred to me, I have your card, so I had to find it. I would have called you sooner, but I couldn't find your card. You couldn't have known that. And that's why sometimes it's even good to revisit some of the same places in your area, just to remind them, I'm still here, I'm still doing this. And even that can sometimes switch a customer's mind, because they go, wow, I remember this guy from last year and the year before, still doing it. That's a good sign. So anyway, just a little business side of things there for you to consider if you want to do this for a living. In the meantime, let me get this unboxed. Product sleeve off, and then this is going to come up like that. Okay. And then we have some foam, some documentation, and our monitor. It doesn't make any sense to have a 25-inch portable monitor, guys. You're going to haul that bad boy around? Are you kidding me? So anybody who sort of turns their nose up at a 15.6-inch monitor doesn't seem to be somebody who's really looking for a portable monitor. You know, if you want a 100-foot projector, that might be a little easier to carry around than a 100-foot portable monitor, if such a thing was ever made. Now, kudos to Minisforum for giving me the metal stand. If you saw my video on the other Minisforum portable, it had like a cardboard. I don't know what the material's made of, but it's not metal, and it's intended to work as a folder to keep the unit safe from scratches, and then the folder origamis into a stand, which isn't very stable. And I found the whole thing very puzzling. Give me a metal stand any day. So we've got Minisforum written there, and then you open it up just as you would a laptop, but instead what you've got are two screens. And that stand will hold those screens up in a portrait mode, as I previously mentioned, or in a horizontal mode, or you don't need the stand at all. Use the top of the other monitor as a stand in case you want to share your screen with somebody on the opposite side of the desk. The other screen is the stand. See, that's intuitive, it's simple. I'm not trying to figure out, does this fold up or down? We do have some protective plastic here that is intended to come off. It's just there for keeping things from getting scratched up in shipping. You shouldn't be operating this stuff with any plastic on it. You might think you're keeping it nice and clean, but you're actually, well, you're just doing it to yourself because that plastic looks terrible. And it does keep it nice and clean for the person you sell it to later when you're done with it. It's very thoughtful for the next buyer. But it is intended to be removed. Now, in the box, as you can see, we've got some cables. We've got what is essentially a cell phone charger and a USB-C to USB-C cable, just like a modern day cell phone charging cable. And you could use that to charge your cell phone. Then we've got just a, sorry, that's going to be just a power delivery cable, because that's just for power. This cable visually looks exactly the same, but it's got a lot more wires in it. So this will deliver power and transfer data back and forth. So don't get those confused. I'll put that over here. And then finally, this last cable is an HDMI, just a regular old HDMI cable. That's all it is. And that's if you want to plug this portable monitor in to maybe an older laptop or an older PC that does not have USB Type-C. In which case, if you do want to use this cable, you'll have to use power to power the monitors. If you use this cable, then you don't need any of those. You just need this one. Is that clear? I think that's clear. So let's get this out of the way. There's nothing else, I think, in this box. We'll just double check. You see anything in there? That's it. Packed really well. It looks like it'd be pretty difficult to have damage other than maybe if they drop something 200 pounds on top of it, but that would be the shipper, not the manufacturer's fault. And then as a way to demonstrate it, I thought we'd take the PC out that we were reviewing the other day, or at least I was introducing you to this bargain of a PC. And I don't lightly say that, but for under $300, the amount of power you get today, it's insane that you're getting a motherboard, a CPU, RAM, storage, cooler, case, power supply, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, operating system, all of that in this little box here. And it's not loud. That's the other thing I like. It's pretty quiet. It uses very little desk space. And here's an example of how you might use it. Now, there's a time and a place for a laptop. And if you're wanting something with more power, with twice as many screens, granted, you still have to provide your own keyboard and mouse, but you don't have to worry about the state of your battery. You're going to be plugging it in. This can present an alternative to a laptop where you're getting more screen and more power for less than half or a third of the price of an equivalent laptop. I'm just saying, one goes hand in hand with the other. And in some cases, laptops aren't a good solution depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish. One of the things I like about this mini PC is that we don't have the big wall warts that take up plugs. I've got a customer who was looking for a new surge protector, and one of the problems, well, I asked them how many things are they plugging into it. They said, well, we're plugging in 4 different things, but, or 6. We're plugging in 6 different things, but we need to have like an 8-port because 4 of the 6 things they're plugging in are those big wall wart adapters. So I like that the power supply part of this is separate, and it doesn't consume or overlap the next socket over in the surge protector, preventing something else, especially another big wall wart, from plugging in next to it. So when I was advising the client as to what to buy, I had to look for a surge protector that had those units spaced out. Not that big of a deal unless you don't know you need it until after you bought the wrong one, and it's got 10 plugs and you can't plug 6 things into it because the 6 things you're plugging in are all blocking the port next to them. So you're only getting 5 things in there maybe, or 4. All right, so this should be the cable here. Now, no damage will occur. If I pick the power delivery cable and run it between these, I just won't get any video. It won't hurt anything. If you're wondering why a USB Type-C cable is so much money, that is the difference between a data and a power cable. The power cables that are USB-C to C are $2. The data cables can be $30 to $40, especially if they're Thunderbolt compatible, because they're very expensive to manufacture. It's not like the old USB that only had 4 wires. I don't know how many wires these have. They have a lot. And they have to meet certain tolerances. And I believe like an extension cable for USB-C is not supported. So there might be somebody out there making them, but they're not supposed to according to the specification, the engineering specs. Now on the side of the monitor, let me come over here and let's take a look-see, close up what's going on this monitor. Come over here. So here is a nice close-up. You can see the stand right here has a rubber feet on it, which is a nice touch. That also prevents it from sliding as well as scratching a surface. We've got some buttons that are right there behind it. That appears to be for volume, a headphone jack, and then a power button. Not sure what that button does. Maybe it reverses what's on top to what's on bottom. We'll find out when we plug it in. And then really just nothing down here. Come around to the other side and you'll see our HDMI port and 2 USB-Cs. Those USB-Cs identify as power. You see the little charge, little lightning bolt. So that's all there is. It's a really simple device with a real clear usage at providing a very unique solution at a very reasonable price point. So let me plug this in. We're going to go to our barrel power connector to our mini PC. We'll take this one USB-C. It's always got to go on the other side every single time. I don't know if it matters which one we plug it into, so I'm going to guess and just pick the middle one. And I need a keyboard and mouse for this, which I have over here. We'll turn that on. We'll plug the wireless dongle for our keyboard and mouse here in the back of the slower USB ports that are at the back of this specific unit. I need to give it some power, so I'll just come down here and grab one of my spare power cables, and we'll plug this in here. And I can plug internet, although for demonstrating the screens, you don't need internet. Or I could have this configured on my Wi-Fi, but I prefer to just plug it in while we're live because it's just less hassle than having to go through the SSID and password during a public video. Now, if I turn this on, just like so, I should be able to hit the power button over here. I see a green light. I don't know where the green light's coming from. Oh, there's a little teeny pinhole green light right next to the power button here. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. It's super teeny tiny. Did the light go red? Yeah, it just went red. You see the little red light or orange? There you go. Now you can see it. We're going to come around. Let me set this back down. And we'll go back to our wider camera 1 angle here. There it is. And we did get something initially. We hit the power button again. I'm assuming the red light means that there's no signal. Since there's no battery to charge in this, it's not going to be an indication of battery. And so far, it may be that we have to turn that feature on. Well, no, we shouldn't have to. It should just work automatically. So we've got volume up and down. We've got power, and I don't know what this other button. Oh, I think that might switch top to bottom, bottom to top. So then what I'm next curious about is if it's the USB-C port that matters. So just for grins and giggles, I'm going to unplug. Wow, that is in there tight. We'll go to the top one and see if that makes any difference. So the light's gone green again here on the side. And we did get the Minisforum logo, but I don't know if it came from the mini PC or the monitor. I'm guessing it's coming from the monitor. And the light is still green. And what does it say? I missed it. Let's give that a second. And let me jump over here to the chat room. I noticed my browser had crashed, so I've been missing what people are saying. Shop Persian Rugs renews their membership. Now a member for 14 months. Says, I should have been a member sooner. I've been watching a long time. Well, thank you for being a member. We appreciate you being here. All right, I still got no signal, so what am I doing wrong? Is it possible that I have to activate the monitor? Wait a minute, now my light is off altogether. There's another possibility that this little PC, I don't know what the power output is. All USB ports, all USB Type-C ports should support DisplayPort. It might say DP, DisplayPort. But you might also have a USB Type-C that says PD. Instead of DP, DisplayPort, it says PD, that means power delivery. Or you might just have a USB-C port that just supports USB 3.2, and that's that. So I'm not quite sure. I can't remember which one this mini PC comes with. So just to double check myself, what I need to do is grab an HDMI cable, and let's just say, let's assume, first of all, that that cable's plugged all the way in. You know, I am well known, if you've been watching this channel, for being far too gentle with anything that plugs in. Quite often I don't seat something all the way down, and that becomes the problem. And I share that with you because that might be the same problem you're trying to resolve, is trying to get something working when you haven't got the cable plugged in. I tend to be a little too gentle with the cables. I've had a few break years ago. And let's face it, this stuff isn't the same quality. It's much, much better than the cables and connectors were years ago. but it's just like a PTSD I have. I'm always overly cautious, and it usually creates my own little frustrations as I try and deal with that. So this monitor light, now that I've got the USB-C cable plugged in, it's orange, but we're not getting any video signal. So I just want to make sure that we're getting a video output on this. So for that reason, I can take this enclosed HDMI cable, because we should be able to run this on one cable, but I need to be able to make sure that we're verified at the desktop and everything's okay with this. I can't imagine anything would be wrong, but it's just part of a diagnostic. Or, you know, just to know if you don't have USB Type-C on your computer, it's not a deal killer. You'll just simply use this as USB Type-C power and then just plug it in like any other monitor. It's just the idea of being portable. Having one cable to do both jobs is quite convenient. So let's try HDMI on here. We'll plug that in, and hopefully we'll get some video this time. Okay, there it is. Now I'm wondering what this top button does. Oh, that's both of them. Cool. What does the top button do when I press that? Oh, that's interesting. Monitor 1 and 2. Oh, that extended my desktop. Do you see that? Okay. I'm going to push this button right here on the side, the top one. When I push that, I think it's going to cycle through different monitor modes. Let's see. Now that's two displays that are mirrored. In other words, if I were to fold this down so that you could see it and I could see it, will the monitor auto-rotate for you? It does. And does it stay the same direction for me? It does. This is not a touch screen. Good, because I don't like touch screens. All right, you getting this? Let me set it back up, and it should auto-rotate back into the proper orientation. And now I'll hit that button again, see what other choices we have here. Now that's just with the HDMI cable installed. And then the USB-C cable is working as a charger. So it looks like maybe just those two modes. Extended desktop versus desktop 1 and desktop 2. No, I don't think that's extended. Let's go one more button press. There we go. Okay, well, it looks like between the two modes anyway. So what would happen if you just wanted to use one screen? You would just simply put it in the duplicated mode, right, where you're duplicating to the other side, and just fold this one out of your way if you're not going to use it. Then the other thing to consider now is, let me just take a look here. And the beeping, I don't know if it's picking it up, but you'll hear the speakers inside the screen. Yeah, it looks like it just switches between two modes. And if I unplug the HDMI cable, I've got to guess that the USB-C cable, where it's plugged into the back of the PC, that's not supporting. I know it supports DisplayPort. I don't know that it supports the power delivery we need. So I'm not sure if it's the capability of the machine. But one more time, I'm going to try this other USB-C port down here. Make sure I get that fully seated. That is a tight fit, brand new parts. What's interesting to me is I can really see that green LED reflecting down on the desk. I don't know if you guys can see that. Right down. Yeah. It'd be hard for the camera to pick it up, but the LED is on the bottom here. And when it shines down on the desk, it's a lot easier to see. It's a pretty small LED, which, by the way, I don't like really bright LEDs. They're too distracting. But I also like having an LED to give me some indication of what's going on. So I've got to guess that that's a power delivery issue, not with the monitor, but with the mini PC. That would be my conclusion. but I can verify it. If I grab this other mini PC, and it just so happens I have another Minisforum. This is the MSO1. This is always my go-to for testing. Let's just see what happens with this one and its USB-C. Now this is Thunderbolt 4 on the MSO1. And I'm going to be short on a power cable. So, power cable. I have power cables, just not readily right here. So just for right now, let's do this. Let me shut this one down. I'll just tap the power button, and this should cycle down no differently than hitting start and shut down. That's pretty universal on most computers and laptops with Windows. And you can also configure it usually in your power settings. So if your machine, if you tap the button, doesn't cycle or do anything, it's an option in Windows that needs to be set. So what I can do just to verify is plug my monitor in over here. And I'll turn it so we can both see it. Like that. I'm going to say edit power. Come on. Still waking up. There we go. Edit power plan. Check advanced power settings. Not there. We'll just type in the search. Change what power button does. Windows 11, control panel, select power options. Isn't that what I did? Let's do it the other way. Instead of going into settings, let's go into control panel. And then from control panel, we'll find power options. Choose what the power button does. That's what it says right up here. When the press the power button sleep, that's why I did it. Okay, that's what happened. I want to say shut down. And it is asking us for a second button that we don't have, but it's intended to be a sleep button. Now when I hit Save Changes, because clearly that wasn't the default setting, if I simply tap the power button, it's no different than going through the mouse shutdown. Same exact thing. It's a proper shutdown process. Just so you know, that's an option available to you on your desktop or your laptop. It's very easy to configure it to whatever your preferences are. Now with the machine powered off, I'm going to disconnect the HDMI cable. And we'll use the same USB-C cable here on our MSO1. And we don't switch power adapters. The MSO1 is much more power hungry. It's also much more money than this little guy. This is a little workstation computer. We'll plug in our network and we'll just grab the power cable, plug it in over here, and then the keyboard and mouse. We'll plug that in over here. These are all faster USB ports, but that's okay. Now let's turn this guy on and see what happens if we get any display. Let me just put this back up so we can both see what it's doing. Get that cable out of the way. Did I turn it on? Yeah, blue light is on. Push the cable all the way in. Yeah. I've seen some mini PCs and some laptops come with a specific, like if they have multiple USB Type-Cs, one may be specifically for external powering a display adapter. versus just providing power or just providing display. Like, I fully expected to see something and nothing's happening, so I'm going to just try the other port. Let's see if we have any better luck with that. Apparently the Minisforum logo is coming up from the screen just to say the screen's got power. So we are getting power delivery from this cable. The only other thing that it could be is, did I confuse my cables? Is this actually, remember what the instructions said. They said one USB-C cable is power only. And I'm not quite sure how you tell them apart, because all we're getting is power. It makes me think that this USB-C cable is a charging cable. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to try it. So let's see if we get any different results here. Back in over here, and back in over here. Neither one of these cables visually seems any different as far as thickness. You might think that a power delivery with data would be a thicker cable because it's got more cables in it, but the sleeves on them are such that they look identical. And that's what looks like the problem was, right? This is user error. Although it would be nice if one cable had a, I mean, this has a tag on it, but it's all in. Oh, okay. You know what? I'm looking for very obvious things like, I don't know, a red stripe on the cable or a red connector, something that would indicate power. And as you can see here, it says this is the only the power supply is supported. So that explains why I wasn't getting a signal from this machine. That's me getting familiar with the product. Now, for me personally, I would grab like a silver Sharpie or a red indelible marker and mark one of the ends on this so that I could just immediately grab it without having to think about it. That's the red one. Grab the red one. The data cable can be black. You know, leave it alone. You only need one to be different so you can tell them apart in an instant without really having to look at the detail. So apparently when I was unboxing things, I got them shuffled. So what? Okay, this is anything that I do here live on camera is a demonstration of just how easy it is, if you're not paying attention to the details, how you could get yourself into a situation where you're diagnosing a problem and the problem is you. In my case, the problem is me. But as long as we analyze it with critical thinking and go through the process to check ourselves as much as we check the devices, one way or the other, we should find the solution. So now looking at the screen here, it looks like we're at a, yeah, that's not a touch screen. It looks like we're at a screen that it wants us to finish what looks like maybe a Windows update. This is so hard to do backwards and upside down. Okay. Okay. It's all starting to make sense now. Volume setting here. Power to turn the monitor off. Down here. What does that say? Oh, that brings up your brightness. If you think the monitor looks a little dim, you can adjust your brightness by hitting the power button when it's on. Just tapping it brings up your menu for brightness, contrast, and the volume up and down buttons then control the submenus, just like a regular TV. What else can I tell you? It's pretty straightforward, pretty well automated in the way that it's working. Here we've got two desktops, right? Push the button at the top here, and that should cycle to, let's see. Just take a second to switch modes to one big screen, and we'll flip it one more time. And I've got to guess. Let me see if this works the way I think it works. So right now we have two separate monitors, even though they look identical. As I move the mouse moves from one to the other, but when I fold it down, it's going to change modes. And when it changes modes, now you're looking at the same screen, and as I move the cursor, I'm assuming it moves on both sides at the same time. The cursor's too little. No, it's still operating as a second monitor. Okay, so what that tells me is, rather than being in a clone mode, let's say you and I were in a presentation or a meeting. I don't maybe want you to see what I'm doing. I only want to show you certain things. So rather than cloning what I'm seeing, what it's doing is it's treating this as a second monitor. So I can choose what windows I want to drag over to the second monitor for you to see, while I'm here behind the scenes and you can't see the options I'm choosing. Got it. And those are your default settings. Now the great thing about this is you never saw me load any software. I just plugged it in. It simply works. If we go back to this machine using the right display USB-C cable, it's going to work exactly the same. Just so you know, that was on me. Let's see if you guys have any questions for me in the chat room here. What does it sound like? It just sounds like a regular set of speakers that you would have in a computer monitor. It's not a speaker. It's not in other words, if you go buy yourself a set of computer speakers with a subwoofer and a sound bar, it's not going to compare to the little speakers that are inside of the monitor. It's very difficult for me to demo the sound in the sense that it's not going to sound any better than the speakers you were listening to me on, number one, or how well my microphone picks it up. It's really there not to be a disco, not to fill a room with sound. It's there to give you the indicators of being in front of it, of bleeps and bloops, USBs plugged in, not plugged in, or listening or watching a YouTube video, and it's got a headphone jack so you can, plug in your headphones and listen privately, and then of course your audio will be dependent upon how good your headphones are. But appreciate the question. Let's see what else. What else am I missing? John Paul Bacon says, could you have two independent displays for two separate systems? No, it's not intended, to the best of my knowledge, to fit a scenario where somebody's got two computers and one monitor. If you bought a regular store-bought monitor, you could plug, let's say, an HDMI 1 and HDMI 2, just like the back of a TV, and then choose your input source. On this one, if that were possible, that would be under our menu. So let's just look at the menu here. And again, this is going to be difficult to show you. My default answer would be to say no, but maybe I'm wrong. Where's my power button? Over here somewhere. Right down here. Let me tap that. Okay, I've got brightness, contrast, mode, standard. And that's under picture, and then there's color settings, audio settings, which has mute and volume. Other settings is language, reset, fill, or Mac extend. We do have input source here. So in this case, it appears I'm incorrect in my assumption. It does seem that you could have something plugged in HDMI, something plugged in USB Type-C number 1 and USB Type-C number 2. And then you would manually select which one you want to display. So in that case, the answer to your question is yes, it does in fact support multiple computers, up to 3 separate video input sources. And then you would go into the menu, you have to select that yourself. When you only use one input source, the monitor knows automatically which one to switch to. But if there's more than one, it doesn't know which one you want. So there you go. Yeah, I learned something new. For me, as a portable display, it doesn't make any sense why I would be plugging two things into it, right? That's why my default answer is probably not, because at what point am I in a scenario, how common would that be, that I need two portable source devices but one monitor and to switch between them? I just can't imagine where that makes any sense. If I were using this in a non-portable fashion, say for example on a desk, instead of using a KVM switch, for example, I just had a keyboard and mouse plugged into computer A, keyboard and mouse plugged into computer B, but I only had room on my desk for one screen. You wouldn't necessarily need this monitor because pretty much any monitor that you could buy in the store does that already. But those monitors aren't portable. You see where I'm getting at? So the fact that this can do that is interesting to me, but it seems impractical why you would spend for a portable monitor when you could probably, for the same money, get a bigger desktop monitor, and they all have multiple, at least two inputs to choose between. So there you go. Maybe it's just a curiosity. I can't think of a practical example other than having a portable monitor not being portable that you would plug multiple devices into it. But you can. Turns out you can. There you go. It's a good question. Never thought of it. If I created this, I wouldn't have put that on there. David Graham with a $1 super chat. Right on. Thank you, David. And Peter VZ joining us from the Netherlands with a €1 super chat contribution. Thank you, Peter. What else you got? Have me answer another question incorrectly. Sean Gallagher just became a supporter. Right on. Thank you, Sean. Welcome aboard. There's Katrina joining us in the chat, says hello. Andy Kane joins us and says hello. Mara says she's multitasking today. How is that any different than any other day? Seems like a silly decision to include a crippled cable. Why not include two all-purpose cables? Well, sure, if you want to spend $15 more. If you're the manufacturer of the product and you're selling to consumers or businesses alike, the first thing they want to know is this the thing that does what I need it to do or more? Is it capable of what I want to use it for, or even more than that? The second thing is, how much is it? So, you could say, well, why don't they just make these little borders out of platinum and maybe a little palladium along the sides? Maybe even put a glass coating across, like glass armor, so it prevents it from being dropped. Maybe they could also put a 10-year warranty on it. Cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. Now, how many units do you think you're going to sell? For that reason, if you think about, for example, when you buy one of these everyday smartphones, Apple or Samsung, whatever, there's no charging cable or adapter included anymore. They used to include headphones, they used to include a charger, they used to include a cable. So here they're giving you that, and you're still finding a way to complain about it. The option would be they don't include it at all. They just go, hey, this is a monitor that's designed for portable use with USB Type-C. We do sell an adapter and cable separately. And when you buy that adapter and cable, they're not going to give you a data cable with the charger any more than your cell phone used to. And then they just took it away altogether. So I'd be very cautious over what you're complaining about, because quite often the solution is we'll give you nothing. We'll reduce the price even further by not including it. And then we'll add that as an add-on purchase at time of sale. Hey, do you want the charger? Do you want another data cable? You pay for what you get. But because you want two data cables, what the heck am I going to do with two data cables? That's just a waste. And now I'm paying for it. It's not like they're including it for free. Everything's got a cost. So for that reason, I think it makes very good sense that they've included it instead of adding it as a nickel and dime add-on item. I just wish they would have color-coded the power cable a little differently rather than that little sticker, because that sticker will probably break or tear over time. And then for sure, it's not that big of a deal. As I've demonstrated, if you plug the wrong cable in, it's pretty obvious. You get power to the monitor with no video. Because I've never used it before, I wasn't quite sure what the capabilities of this little guy were. So I wasn't sure if the machine could do it. If you've been using it for a while with the same box, with, you know, and everything's working as normal, and you go to plug it in, and suddenly you're not getting video where you used to, you probably got the wrong cable. I mean, so what? You can obviously go and buy another data cable on Amazon for 30 bucks. And, you know, but don't force me and everybody else to have to do it. Anyway, just food for thought. I mean, that's the way I see it. And if I was the manufacturer, I'm totally on board with it. I would make the exact same decision. Remote troubleshooting 2 computers at the same time. I can remote troubleshoot 20 computers at the same time using one monitor. So I don't quite understand that. If you were somebody who was a professional computer repair technician, you wouldn't be using portable screens, not generally speaking. And if you're doing this to earn money, then you can afford, for example, a regular screen that's bigger and use both of the inputs. Sometimes some monitors have 3 or 4 inputs. You don't need to buy anything specific like this. For the amount of money this costs, you can just buy one monitor. Troubleshooting 2 computers at the same time on one monitor is something every monitor's been able to do pretty much since the 90s. This is intended to be portable, so let's not lose. The reason why I don't normally show monitors on this channel is because they're all very subjective to what you like. Do you like the kind of panel? Do you like the type of ports or the number of ports it has in the back? The price, the warranty. Does it move up and down, or does it swilt and tivel? Swilt and tivel? Tilt and swivel. You understand? You might never ever use that feature, but you might also absolutely have to have it. There's so much subjectivity in this that it's difficult for me to make any recommendation given what your personal perspective is. The only reason I make an exception from time to time would be something novel, unique, innovative, in the sense that we've looked at portable monitors before, maybe 2 or 3 times. I'm not very brand specific in that. I think they're all kind of the same. But here we've got something that is definitely not the same as the others. This is definitely unique. And of course, it's going to cost a little bit more. You're getting 2 monitors, so you can expect to spend as you would for 2 monitors. But if you did buy 2 monitors, not only would you spend less, but if you wanted to diagnose 2 systems at the same time, you could certainly do that as well for less money than this cost. So this is really designed. It's sort of like you're buying a screwdriver and what you really need is a pair of pliers. It's not the manufacturer's fault you're not using the tool as intended. And in fact, that screwdriver could be a snap-on $90 screwdriver. And what you really need is a $15 pair of pliers. You're using the wrong tool for the job. But regardless, if you wanted to do it that way, if you wanted to diagnose 2 machines at the same time, and to do it on a tiny little screen, you know, 15.6-inch screen on a bench with 2 cables plugged in and switch between the inputs, you could. It just doesn't make any sense why you would spend that much for something portable. It doesn't add up for me. But not everything everybody does makes any sense to me. Douglas Burchell says it's a niche product. It is a niche product, absolutely. The very fact, it's almost double niche. The very fact that it's portable, right there in and of itself, makes it niche. I think we're getting an update happening here, or it's going to sleep. The fact that it's now 2 monitors built into one is another bit of segmentation of that niche. But one that we'll see how it sells may be enough to make it worthwhile producing it, right? Depending on how many units you sell. Now, I wanted to show you a little bit about some basic Windows networking here. So what if we wanted to transfer files from this machine to this machine? As I mentioned, just as an excuse to use the monitor, we'll hook these machines up to, well, I'll leave this monitor up. I don't know why my wallpaper went away. What's this button? Am I in the wrong mode? Got a second to process. I want this to be all one big screen. That's better. Okay, so Windows networking has become so simple, and yet it does still require an understanding of what networking does and how it works. If you lack that knowledge, it's going to be very difficult for you to make any sense over these steps. But if you have basic understanding of security and a basic understanding of file transfer and sharing, along with permissions if you want the other person at the other computer to only be able to read certain data, or to be able to change that data, or even delete that data, you have control of that on the system you're sharing from. Any computer can share its data. If it can access the internet, it can share its data with any other computer anywhere in the world that can access the internet. That's why security is so important, and it is turned off by default unless you know enough to turn it on. And if you don't know enough to turn it on, maybe you're better off leaving it off and just use your flash drive to go between the two. I'm just saying, for safety's sake, it's not about anything personal. It's about what makes the most sense here. If you want to dedicate yourself to learning the minimal amount of what networking is and how it works, then these steps would apply for you. And that is, you're going to need to plug these computers in somehow or have them wirelessly connect to a router. Likely, you're doing that right now. In some way that you're watching this video, you are likely connected to a router, unless you're watching via a cellular phone connection, which also, by the way, can share files. It's just a little different. We have two Windows 11 computers here. We have a Minisforum monitor, a Minisforum MSO1, and the Minisforum UN1250. But here's the thing. They don't have to be Minisforum. This could be Dell and HP and Samsung. It doesn't matter. None of that matters as long as Windows is on them. And it doesn't matter if it's Windows 7 or Windows 10 or Windows 11, except I think you're profoundly unwise to be running anything other than Windows 10 or 11 right now in January of 2025. Everything else is obsolete and not updated. And essentially all those security locks that are put in place to protect you from all of the people online you're connecting to, whether you realize it or not, you are connecting to the world. That world is filled with bad people who will easily crack through the last time your computer got security updates years ago on any operating system that's Windows based that is not 10 or 11. It's light work. It's almost no effort at all. For you to ignore that is your choice, but it doesn't prevent it from happening. Even with all the security enabled, it doesn't prevent it 100%. But it puts the odds in your favor that you're not going to be targeted unless you are somebody they know and they're specifically highlighting you. Thieves will go for who's easy. So if you're running Windows 8, Windows 7, anything other than Windows 10 or Windows 11 as a Windows operating system goes, you're just inviting thieves to take your stuff. You might as well not lock your car doors. You might as well leave your front door unlocked or wide open. Why not? If you're going to choose to live that way, then why not do it across the board? Obviously, if you leave your front door open and your door's unlocked, you can visually see that. But with a computer, you've got to see it in your head. And that's why I mentioned the importance of understanding networking basics, or don't even do this, because you're going to be frustrated that it doesn't make any sense to you when the steps are very, very simple. But if you're incapable or you've never been taught how to visualize, this is going to be a very frustrating experience for you. In such case, for you, the right answer is to copy your data to a flash drive, walk it over to the other machine, and plug it in. That's it. So we're talking about file sharing in the same building. So let's say we have a computer here. We have let's say this computer's in one bedroom. This computer's in another bedroom or office within the same building. We're plugged in or wirelessly connected to a router. It doesn't make a difference. Whether it's plugged in or wireless makes no difference. The security vulnerabilities are the same, except with Wi-Fi, you add another layer of security vulnerability. If you don't have that connection encrypted, then somebody around the broadcast range of the router could be outside of the building hacking into you, which they cannot do with a solid cable. They'd have to be in the building plugged in. But with all the security enabled, you're good to go. So if we want to share some files on this computer right here, let's start. I'm trying to think the best way to start this. Let's screen capture what's going on over here onto the screen so you can see the steps. I think that'll be the best way. We'll share files here, and then we'll access those files from here. So let me grab my capture, my HDMI port that goes to the capture card. And then I'm going to need to steal my keyboard and mouse, and I'll plug it in over here for right now. And let's turn this guy on again. Oh, I still need a power cable. So let me get this cable wrapped up and out of my way, because we don't need that anymore. It's all part of my diagnostic. So this will require a little setup for the demo, but not necessarily the way you might do it at home. As I mentioned, you are going to be, if you have a standard internet connection in your house, then you have a router. These days, it used to be, some people didn't. That was back in the 90s. Cable companies would just give you a modem and you're on your own. And boy, were there a lot of viruses and stuff. And that was back before the number of bad guys hasn't been 10,000 or 1,000,000 times worse now than it was back then. Like if it was bad back then, it's 1,000,000 times worse, if not 10 million times worse. Just the number of people that are looking to do you in is a profound number. I have a hard time picturing it in my head. And it gets worse every day. I don't want to make you paranoid, but I do want you to be prepared. Now, for this demonstration, rather than using my own personal network, we're going to set up our own little network with just a little switch. This is like a router, except it doesn't provide IP addresses. If we, yeah, we'll do it this way. Like I said, there's a couple different ways I can accomplish this. I'm just thinking using a router would be a better example now that I've really thought this through. Let me just grab a spare router and plug it in, and we'll treat this no differently than you would at your house, right? If you wanted to copy along with this, using a switch is not exactly what you would have laying around you, but you would have a router. So for that reason, now that I've thought about it, this was not a good choice. Hey, I get there. Give me time. Let's just pick out a router. Any router will do. Let's see. I'll just use one of these little travel Wi-Fi routers. These things are pretty neat, and it won't take up much space on my desk or require a lot of cables. But this is something you're meant to travel with. And hey, why not have a portable router if you're going to have a portable monitor anyway? Right? I mean, that makes sense. These things, once again, didn't plan for this, but it makes sense that if you had one, you might have the other. And this would enable you to share, say, a hotel internet connection or a public internet connection somewhere, the Starbucks, or even share your own, tethering your phone, let's say. Now, this one only has 2 ports, one coming in and one going out. So let me grab a different one. I have a different one that has 1 coming in and 2 going out. And again, it can connect the one coming in wirelessly and the ones going out wirelessly. For my example, I don't want to go through wireless setup because it slows me down. And I'm already slow enough as it is. Let's see if this one has 2 ports on it or not. I cannot remember which one is which. Now this would be a router no differently than the router you have at home, only that this router is smaller. It's not as feature rich as what you probably have at home. And the one you have at home probably allows for multiple devices, 4 usually plugged in at the same time, whereas one of these might be 2 or 3 devices wired. wirelessly, they'll be nearly identical. Okay, so this has 3 ports, 1 in, 2 out, and it's powered through USB power here. Interesting. Let's see, did they give us a little USB power adapter? Because it's not USB-C. They give us an Ethernet cable and a USB power adapter. So the idea, I want you to think about the concept of how cool this is. The idea here is that we can take our computer power, just as we are using with this monitor, right? We got one cable providing power and video out of this computer, powering these 2 screens, and also providing the 2 screens with the data of the video display. Then included with this router, this is a GLI net, this one's called the Creta. You could take the regular USB type A end here and plug it in, again, to any USB port on your computer. And then a little Wi-Fi router here, little travel router, gets plugged in. And now the computer is not only powering, this little computer is not only powering 2 monitors and a display, but is also now powering the Wi-Fi router. So now we're not, rushing to find plugs or something, especially in a hotel or a Starbucks or wherever you are. But obviously you need to have something turn this on. Or this could be a laptop and you're on battery. And your laptop's battery then would be obviously powering the screen as well as this little adapter. And your battery will drain a bit faster as a result of that, but that should be obvious. Now, if we hardwire our LAN connection in here, what I would do is I would take the Ethernet cable out of this MSO1 and plug it here. I'll need my glasses. There'll be a port that says WAN, Wide Area Network, or the world. So we want to plug into the world. That is the internet. If you're not sure, when you have 3 of them, one will just have a different symbol. Then two symbols will be the same, one symbol will be different. And this one has symbols. And one looks like a little globe. That's the world. There, we're plugged into the world. Now, I can connect wirelessly from here to here and here to here, or just to keep things moving along, I can simply use these really thin Ethernet cables. But again, if you're traveling, you might not want to have all the cables. And I'll plug a black one in and a green one so I can tell them apart. And it doesn't matter which one I plug where. One goes here, and one goes back here. And again, we could do this completely wirelessly along with our phones, etc. This represents your router at home. Whether you connect to the router wirelessly or wired doesn't make a difference in how you share files. All the steps are the same. Back in the day when you had a corded telephone or you had a cordless telephone, it didn't make any difference whether or not you had the cord. The phone still worked and operated exactly the same way, in such the same as here. I wire it because it's simple and clear. All right, and it's faster than going through the whole SSID and password on each one of these. And you don't have to do one or the other. You can do a combination of both. You can have it wired to some devices and wireless to others on all Wi-Fi enabled routers, be it portable or a home router. With them being plugged in, the other thing I need is an additional power cable so I can turn this unit on. I think that's pretty obvious that if the computer's not turned on, you're not going to be sharing any files to or from. Let me take a quick look here. Let's see, I've got a power cable down here somewhere. Yeah, this will work. Once again, this just uses a standard PC power cable. I've got tons of these laying around here. They're a dime a dozen on Amazon, so it's okay to, they're not difficult to find. It's okay to have some spares. So we'll plug this in and we'll give it a, plug it into the surge protector down here. And all I'm doing is basically, I just need keyboard, video, mouse, and power to both of these, and then hook up the network right up to this with it's being powered through USB. That's it. So it may look like a lot of wires here, but in fact, it's very straightforward and simple. If you have one computer, you have a certain number of wires that you may not find intimidating at all. That's my keyboard, that's my mouse, that's my monitor, that's my speakers, that's my power. But if you have another computer, then you're going to need the same cables. That's my keyboard, that's my mouse, that's my monitor, that's my network, that's my power. And if you have 3 computers, and then suddenly you have this big nest of cables. But it's all very simple. So with this plugged in, let's turn this bad boy on. And then let's go over to the capture card to see the desktop here. And I'll walk you through. Remember, these are both clean installs of Windows 11 Pro. It doesn't matter if it's Pro or Home. That used to matter back in the days. Don't waste your money on Pro. If you've got Home, you're fine. No reason to upgrade that. But here we go. So we've got these 2 machines. This one should be booting to the desktop. This one's sitting at the desktop. They are all default the way it installs clean out of the box for Microsoft. I've made no modification to them, okay? So let's go back over to, this will be camera 2. That should pull up our desktop. Okay, let me put camera 1 up at the same time so we're not gonna lose which machine we're on. So let me go back to, just a second here. Grab camera 1. Let's put it over. Why is that not working for me? Defaulted to camera 2. Camera 1. Now let me drag it and resize. Thank you. Okay, so this is the machine we're on right now. Clean install of Windows. Now let's say I want to share some files. Let's say I want to take these testing folders like hardware info and Crystal Diskmark and Cinebench and CPU-Z. I want to right click on those ones I've selected and select cut. We're going to make a new folder. New folder. And we're going to call it shared stuff. Call it whatever you want. And then to test it, we got to put something in it, right? So we'll just put that stuff in there. Now, while we're in here, we can do things such as go to Properties. This is actually not in there. Let's close this out. Let's right mouse click on that folder. Show more options. Where's my share? Properties, sharing, share. Choose people to share with. Now, this is where you have to either put in the exact name of whatever you're signing into with Windows. That's your username. That keeps other people out that are on your network already. So if you had a payroll department and you didn't want other employees seeing how much money people were making in the company, you might not include them in this particular share. But I want everyone in the building to have access. So I'll just type everyone. And you'll see that that's an identified user. I didn't just make that name up. It's an identified acceptable user choice that's in Windows. And that's why it's got the little icon next to it. It automatically capitalized it. Now, if I allow everyone access into this folder on my desktop, do I also want to give everyone permission to make any changes? So if this is an office and this contains Word, Excel documents that other people are going to work on, we need them to be able to save the changes. But by giving them the ability to save changes, we're also giving them the ability potentially to delete our files. But if we have backups, who cares? Also, if they're already in our building, we must trust them. right? We're already giving them a computer with network access. So, I mean, if you can't trust your own employees, I think maybe it's time to let some employees go. But we're going to give them read and write access, but this is your choice. That way they can make changes, and then we'll hit the share button. Now, in order to share, we have to turn off all of those security blocks that are in place on a default Windows 11 installation, same as Windows 10. We need something called network discovery turned on. So we're going to say yes on network discovery. It says your folder is shared and this is where it's located. Okay, the other thing I want to do, we'll close all this out. I want to check a couple of network settings. If I come to my right bottom corner down here, right click on my wireless or wired connection and go to the settings where it says network and internet settings. We can take a look at our Ethernet connection to make sure that we're on a private network, not a public network. This is a private network. And while on the private network, let's go back, because we do not want to enable network discovery on a public network. That would mean Starbucks, McDonald's, the hotel. We want to absolutely be sure we're on a private network where this does not work. You can override it so that it does work on a public network, but that would be profoundly unwise. So the next thing you go to is advanced network settings down here. And it's very simple. We choose the adapter. Is it wired or wireless? We're wired, right? And then this tells us our connection speed and all this other stuff. And under advanced sharing settings, right down here, we're going to say we can set up network stuff automatically. Yes. Network discovery. Yes. Now, what about public networks? We want to turn public network stuff off for safety. This should only happen on private networks. And as far as any network goes, regardless of it's private or public, I don't want password protected sharing. You might, but I don't. I just want it open, just like it was a flash drive that we're sharing. That's my personal preference. And that should be all we need in theory, unless there's other Windows 11 security settings that this particular set of controls fixes. I'm not sure. Let's find out. So to find out, I am going to switch. I'm just going to pull the HDMI cable from this little computer and take it over here to the MSO1. And now we should be getting the desktop over here in just a second, as well as on these screens here. Yeah, there's my screensaver. Okay. Oh, and I need to move the keyboard and mouse. I don't have enough desk space to have 3 different keyboards and mice, so bear with me here. Just going to find somewhere I can plug this in. Now you also have the option of putting a unique name on this as it appears on the network, which I have not shown you. I usually just stick with whatever the default name is, but you can do either way. Why is my... I am confused. Why is that running? Let's go here to our yellow Explorer folder, which probably opened. I guess having this other monitor up isn't such a good idea. Let me disconnect that, just so we're both looking at the same screen. There we go. Yeah, that's just my wallpaper running in the background. Okay, so when it comes to being able to see that folder we just shared, we definitely want to make sure a couple of settings are in place. So one would be right-click on this connection, network and internet settings, and the Wi-Fi is turned on, but we're not using it right now. We're on the Ethernet. And on the Ethernet, what we want to know is, are we on a public or a private connection? And do we have network discovery turned on? So if I come down here to, where is it? Application, authentication settings, is that it? No, that's not what I want. Let's go back here. Let's just go to advanced network settings down at the bottom. Oh, this has multiple Ethernet connections on it. That's why I'm so confused. So which one is connected? They're all enabled, but which one is the one connected? I mean, I'm assuming it's the top one. I don't know. Let's just go to advanced sharing settings for right now. And so for public networks, well, this is what I was looking for. Network discovery is off, file and printer sharing is off. For private networks, network discovery is on, so clearly I had turned this on before. Now, file and printer sharing is only if you want to share stuff. You don't necessarily need to turn this on to see somebody else's shares. But if we want to be able to go back and forth so they can see us and we can see them, and I have a shared folder and they have a shared folder, then we both need file and sharing turned on. So who's ever doing the sharing needs to have that on. So if everybody in the office is doing sharing, or you want to be able to send files either way, then we would also create a share here as well. And then as far as other networks, password, so I have previously configured this. Now, if I go to the yellow folder, whoops, and I go to the network, I should see this Minisforum computer. Now it's telling me they're turned off. Why is it turned off? I'm going to turn that on, and it says, make the network I'm connected to a private network. Correct, that's what I wanted. So it even walks you through that. Now we've got something called desktop 9 TAD. Is that this little Minisforum? I don't know. Users, public users, desktop. No, that's this desktop. That's this local computer. That's a little deceiving. So it's looking at itself. Let's go back over to the network again. This is, sorry, this is the MSO1 that we're looking at here. And let me just check the network settings one more time. It helps. So in my case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 network cards. I've got the wireless card. I've got two, I think it's a 2.5 gig and a 5 gig. And then I have two SFP plus 10 gig ports. This MSO1 is a serious workstation. So I just need to figure out which one I'm on. So let's just go back to, turn that off. Back to that little screen, right click on that little screen, network and internet settings should be in here. Oh, it downloaded an update. Let's go ahead and put that update on because this could affect our ability to network the computers. I cannot emphasize how important it is that if you postpone your updates, you set all this up, there may be a new security setting that goes in that just turns around and disables what you just did. I'd rather just set it up once. But it is possible, especially after a big update like 23H2 to 24H2, that you have to reset things up again. So let's let that reboot. And again, we're on this machine right here. This is all set up, it's running. We should be able to access the share on this. Alan Lindos said he sent an Amazon gift card. Oh, let me check my phone, Alan. It's been a few minutes, like the whole show. Let me take a look. Oh, there you are. He goes, it's a rare Sunday broadcast and my usual late fee of $7.77. Right on. Well, thank you, Alan. I appreciate that very much. And again, another shout out and thank you to Mark Gaines who sent the Amazon gift card earlier. I think that catches me up. Okay. Let these updates finish. William Lynn says, can I have one of these displays connected to one computer and another display connected to another, and then see them both at the same time? Say computer on the right on the top and computer on the left on the bottom. No, you cannot. No, in that case, you'd buy just two portable monitors. Okay, so if we look at our network settings again. Let me go full screen over here. Let's try this one more time. Right click, network and internet settings. It says the one we're connected to is Ethernet number 2. And under properties, it is listed as a private network. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. And then all the way at the bottom, where's my advanced sharing? Here. Private, yes. If you don't see the advanced sharing here, simply go back to network and internet, scroll down, and you should see advanced sharing, or advanced network settings rather, all the way at the bottom. Let's just double check that Ethernet 2. Yeah, we are connected here. Advanced sharing, network discovery and printer sharing have been turned on, and public networks, make sure they're off. And again, I want my password protected sharing turned off. All this other stuff really doesn't matter. Public folders, these are your basic, when you click on this PC and you can see, downloads, desktops, pictures, music, videos. These are your public folders. I believe those are the public folders. Anyway, I like to specifically pick which folders I want to share. So I always do that one by one. I wouldn't just share a whole C drive, for example. Now you notice when I click on network, I'm not seeing anything at this time. And that would imply to me that we're having perhaps a browsing issue, or we're not giving the network enough time to sort of look around. The other thing I want to make sure of, or double check, is the machine that we made changes on. I want to make sure those changes took effect. And so one way to easily do that would be to simply restart the machine, turn it off, turn it back on again, or just go to start and shut down and restart. Because for all I know now, the other machine may have been getting an update too. So what I'm going to do is just take a moment to take the HDMI cable out of the MSO1 and plug it back in over here. Now remember, we're talking about walking from one room to another to do this. I just happen to have both machines sitting on the desk here, so I can make light work out of this, where you might have to, go up and down stairs or something. And once you set it up, you shouldn't have to mess with it anymore, again, unless some big update comes through. And then let me grab my keyboard and mouse so I can just double check what's going on. There we go. And let me just check this one more time. Network and internet settings. The trick is always going down to advanced network settings. Make sure that under advanced sharing settings, we are turned on. Network discovery has to be on. And for all networks, yeah, that's what I want. That's exactly what I want. And then the other thing, and we don't have to worry about it yet, but when you look under your sharing, you'll notice there's a couple different items here under the sharing tab, which is the share button and advanced sharing. So when we hit the share button, this is where we added everyone, right? But under advanced sharing, you have some more folders, like share this folder, what it's called, and then any permissions. And in this case, I want to give everyone full control. We'll click OK. That may be a step that needs to be done. It can get a little confusing to go, well, didn't you set that in the first one? It depends on the level of sharing you want to do. And the other thing I want to do is log out and log back into Windows. And the fastest way for me to do that is to reboot it, just restart it. And then we'll let that get back to the desktop. Oh, and I'm also going to show you where you can change your computer's name so you can locate it easily on the network. By default, Windows gives these computers a name that doesn't really make any sense. I don't know how they come up with it, but it's going to make a lot more sense to a human being if you name it yourself. And it's not often something you do during Windows setup, so it just goes with a default name. If we just type in the word system down here, I think that'll get us there. System information? No, that's not going to get us there. I'm going to right click on this computer and go to Properties. And then what that does is this brings up our, let me minimize this a little bit, resize it, I mean. You'll see it says rename this PC. We're in System and About, okay, in case you're wondering where we are. Go to Settings, go to System, go to About. You could probably just type in rename PC down here, it might be a shortcut. Let's rename this because this PC name is Desktop 4BV. I don't know what any of that means. So let's just call it the UN, what did I say this was? 1250. I think that's what it's called. So it's renaming the computer on the network. That's the computer's name on the network. And we need to log out and log back in again to the network for that name to communicate with the router. Say from now on, this is, I've just done a name change. Okay? If you're not networking, you probably don't even care what your computer's name is. It's just really the name you're going to see in your, like with Acronis, it'll default to that as your backup name, or on a network, which is more likely where you're going to have any potential confusion. And once again, in our shared folder, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 folders in here, okay? So let's say I don't want to re-download these on every computer I'm testing, so I just put it on a network share, and then I go over to the computer I'm testing. So again, we'll take our HDMI cable out, move it over to the MSO1. Bearing in mind, these would ordinarily be 2 computers in 2 separate rooms of the building, all plugged in. We wouldn't be sharing an HDMI cable or a keyboard or mouse. I'm only doing that because I'm here on a workbench trying to demonstrate this without having to walk around the house, like to show you in real time what that looks like. That's why I say networking requires some visualization of what you're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. So if we go back over here, we'll click on network again. Let's see, it still says it's empty. Let's down. Why are we not seeing anything still? I'm going to restart this computer now that we've changed the network name. And now these restarts may not be entirely necessary, but they're not hurting anything, right? These are fast computers. They just take a minute to restart. And at least that way, our network diagnostic is clean. It's entirely possible when we reboot, all this works fine, or it's entirely possible when we reboot, we're still missing another step. So just bear with me for a second, because I don't do this every single day. Because I don't do it every single day, I don't have the entire process memorized click for click, but I have the overall concept, so it just takes a minute for me to realign myself. If you've never done it before, give yourself that permission. Don't get frustrated and give up. There's a box somewhere that needs to be checked, or you just need to restart. And since restarting is the simple, easy thing, always start with the simple, easy thing first, and then it's determined if you can move on, and enjoy your shared folder, or if you're still configuring it. So with a nice clean reboot, let's go back to our yellow folder, back over to our network, and see if we're seeing anything shared here. It's looking. It's coming up with nothing. So that suggests to me that we have potentially in the router itself created a guest network unknowingly. That may be default, and the router's preventing it, or I still have something configured missing the config. So I'm going to look one last time, just to see if I'm missing anything. Look back over to our advanced network settings and advanced sharing. That's on, that's on, that's on. That's all it should be. We need to be on a private network, which is our current profile, and we need to make sure a private network has network discovery on. This is a public network. We do not want network discovery or file and printer sharing on a public network. We only want it on a private. This is really for me sharing files with others. So for example, we'll reverse it the other way around. This is also another test you can do. We can make a folder here, or heck, let's just take the Crystal Diskmark Portable and let's share it with everybody. Let's see if it works the other way, just to determine if it may be a setting in the router. Let's go to Properties, and we'll go to Sharing. And we need to change the share name, the computer name. So let me change the computer name first. So we're going to go under here and we'll type in change computer name. And it brings up tutorials. That's not where I wanted to go. I'm going to just right click on this computer, go to Properties. Then I'm going to say rename this PC. And this is the MS01 PC. Click OK. It's going to change the name on the network and we're going to restart. When we restart, then I'm going to go ahead and just add a shared folder, make sure that the permissions are, no password, on private networks only, and then go back to this machine and see if it reads it the other way. If it's not reading in either direction, it's possible you're on a guest network. That's the point of a guest network, is to keep people out of your stuff. It just isolates them to internet access only. That's why you might want an appliance or security device, an Internet of Things, Ring doorbell, camera, garage door opener on your guest network. Because if those items get hacked and those are on your main network, then your bad guys can get through your garage door opener into your main network. But if the garage door opener is on its own guest network, along with all the other appliances, they can hack the appliances all day. They won't go any further than that. That's where we're at with security these days. People are just ridiculous. So let's right click on a folder that we want to share. I'm going to go to Properties. Now I'm going to share it. And we'll say to share it here. We're going to share that with everyone. And I want to give everyone read and write access. Now in theory, by hitting the share button, that's all we should have to do. But if you want to be very thorough about it, and it does tell you if your computer's asleep or turned off, people can't see it. I mean, duh. We can go to Advanced Sharing, and we can make sure that we have Share This Folder checked, name the folder, which is the default folder name, or you can put any name you want there. With regards to permissions, we got everyone with full control. Click OK, and click OK, and close. Okay, so now this folder here is shared on the network, and the other folder on the other computer, they should be able to see each other. So what I want to do is take the HDMI cable back over to the UN1250, and I need my keyboard and mouse. We'll plug that in here. Okay. Back over to my yellow folder. Over to network. Oh, look at this. File sharing is turned off. That would explain why I wasn't able to see the other way around. Let's turn that on. Something changed that. So I'm going to go back down here one more time. Again, once you set this, unless there's a big Windows update, you should never have to set it again. So when I set this up for businesses, it's usually just that first configuration, and we're good to go. Now we're on Ethernet 2, which should be on a private profile. And sharing, network discovery is on private networks. File and printer sharing is on private networks. Public networks, it's off. And with all networks, I've got the password protected off. Everything looks good to me. And my current profile, am I on public or private? How do I know? It tells me right here, right at the top, I'm on a private network. In doing such, I should see other computers on my network. I should see the MSO1, and the MSO1 should see the UN1250. So when this isn't working properly, and normally this is a very simple thing when we're dealing with regular home-based routers. Because this is a travel router, it is possible its default settings are different from a home router. And it's worth discussing because Your router could be preventing your sharing. Your network cabling itself might be good enough for internet, but just failing on sharing if you're using older cables. Or your router or any other networking equipment may need to be unplugged and plugged back in again if it's been a long time. All of that can potentially fix this. And once it's fixed, as I mentioned, once it's configured, it should stay configured indefinitely. So I am a little baffled that that's not showing up. And the one part of the equation that's different is this little router right here. So I can't help but wonder if maybe that sharing was by default turned off because it's a travel router. Let's take a look at it. The way we can find out what this router is and how to configure it is to type in CMD and hit enter. And then when the text box comes up, we just type in ipconfig. That's going to give us a gateway. The gateway is just another term for router in our case here. So to type in 192.168.8.1 gives us access to this router. So we just open a browser and we type in 192.168.8.1. Close that tab. So it wants to know an admin password that's written on the bottom of the router. Oh my goodness. These glasses make it very difficult for me to see. This has got our SSID and password default. Doesn't show the login default. So let me try, I don't know, admin? Does that get us in? No. Okay, that got us in. We have an upgrade to do on this router. Let me turn off camera one for a second so you can see. Let's go over to, I gotta go full screen so I can see. So this is the router firmware, and it's telling us there is a new version. We've got 4.3.17. It says there's 4.3.18. Let's go ahead and upgrade it. These kind of firmware updates can also be fixing sharing issues as well as security issues that are vulnerabilities that a hacker can use. The hackers can get in easier than we can. So that's kind of the state of it. Now this is a quick upgrade. This just uses OpenVPN, or OpenWR2 is what I mean to say. And I really like that because it's an open source firmware on the router. And just like any other BIOS update or firmware update, just leave it alone, don't unplug it, let it do its firmware upgrade and restart itself. It may be that, again, we could have default settings that disable the file sharing, and it could be that through an update they change those default settings. So regardless, we want the update on for all of those reasons. And you absolutely want to make sure when you're networking, especially if you're struggling with anything, you're running the latest network card drivers, whether it's wireless or Wi-Fi, just because it's working. It's quite possible that the reason you can't see anything on your network is the driver you're using for your network card is outdated and Windows Update hasn't offered you a new one. And what you should do is either go to the manufacturer's page of the motherboard or the manufacturer's page of the network card. See if there's a newer version. If it's Realtek, MediaTek, Intel, they release new versions about every 6 or 8 weeks. So if you're still running a driver from 2019, it won't hurt you to update that to a driver from, say, even 2023. It's still going to be much, much newer. There's a reason why these drivers get updated. And just because Windows Update doesn't present it to you, doesn't mean you don't need it. And that is the next super easy thing to check. We've talked about restarting the equipment. We've talked about checking your cable. Make sure it's plugged in all the way, that the cables are good. If you have pets or rodents, they could have chewed through the cable such that the cable sort of works. So always check the easy things first. The next thing is, obviously, is the router up to date? It's an easy thing to look for. If it's equipment provided by your cable provider, If it's a modem and a router built in, your cable provider does all this for you. This is if you bought your own. And then making sure you have the latest network card driver installed. I have more times than I can count solved frustrating networking problems that didn't make any sense by simply updating the driver, and then everything worked fine. Networking is incredibly simple. And the harder it is for you to configure, the harder it is for the bad guys to get in. So if you're like shaking your fist going, you know, why is this so difficult? It's because of all the bad people that want to take everything from you. If those people didn't exist, we wouldn't have to go through any of this. But unfortunately, not only do those people exist, they're growing in number every day by the thousands. So the threats are worse today than they were yesterday. And they're much worse yesterday than they were a year ago. So that's why all these updates are so critical and so important. But when they're applied, and you have antivirus, and you have, like I use Malwarebytes, a paid version, we're using the Windows firewall, we're keeping our router updated, you should have good peace of mind that you are secure, as long as you're not clicking willy-nilly on things that show up in your inbox or on your screen, and, you know, basically undoing all of your own security. You should have confidence that you can, you know, not expect to get hacked easily unless someone is specifically targeted you. So for example, you're a celebrity or a public figure. They know who you are, they're going after you. Otherwise, they don't know who you are. You've just left the door open. They don't know if you're rich or poor. They don't know. They'll break in and take what you got. So, what was that comedian said the other day? Someone came into my house. They broke in looking for money. So I helped them. Like, yeah, let's see if we find any. Now, the reason we're saying they can't reach this page is the router's rebooting itself. After it applies a firmware update, just like a computer BIOS update, it has to restart. That's going to take a minute. Usually the lights on the front indicate status, and depending on how big the firmware update is and how powerful the router is, depends on how long this takes, but usually just about 2 or 3 minutes. There's Mitch Morrison joining us in the chat. Mitch says, where do royal cats get married? Westminster Tabby. Oh boy. Oh boy. Welcome in, Mitch. Good to see you. All 3 lights coming back on here, so I should be able to refresh. And let me get logged back in here. So let's go full screen again. Right click, full screen. Oh, it saved my password. Sure how handy that's going to be. We'll go down here and we'll see the same password in we did before. Now we should have the latest firmware. Now I just want to check on this router, and again, this is a travel router, so its default settings may be different than a home router. I want to see if network sharing is enabled. I'm just curious. Like if we look at upgrade, we should see that we've got 4318 and verify our firmware is up to date. That's all down here. And up onto clients, we should see everything that's plugged in. Now what's interesting is we see the UN 1250, because that's the machine we're on right now. And then I also see an AX16 Pro, which hasn't been turned on in a long time, and a Galaxy Book 3. That's my laptop that's on the network I'm essentially plugged into. And then the MSO1 just showed up just now. So all of that's good. My question is, does this router have, like under network, under LAN, local area network, are we allowing file sharing here, or has that been disabled? You see, there is a guest network. Are we on the private one, or are we on the guest one? Oh, the guest network is 192.168.9, and the private network is 192.168.8. Did you notice that? So that means if we didn't want file sharing, we'd be on the guest network.
and you can assign that based on the MAC address of the machine. It gets a little complicated. I don't want to get into that today, but these options are all in there depending on how detailed you want to go with your own security. If there's anybody in the building you want to keep out. I'm assuming you live alone and you have 2 or 3 computers and you want to share files and you don't want to have to enter your own name and password every single time because that's just stupid. The fact that you're in the building gives you access, right? And if you don't belong in the building, you've got bigger problems. So that's the way I see it. And I just want to make sure that it's like firewall. That would be the other thing, that we make sure that we have the ability to share. Port forwarding, I don't care about. DMZ, I'm not worried about that either. That's more related to going outside of the building. So out of curiosity, if I just go to my yellow folder now, since the router rebooted, now if I go to network, what do I see? Anything? Okay, this is good. Remember, let me go back to camera 1 so you can just tell I haven't changed anything here. We're on the UN1250. This is the MSO1. Our HDMI cable and our keyboard and our mouse, we're on this unit right here. And the unit it sees on the network is this one over here. And we could share 1,500 folders on this if we want, or we can share one folder with 1,500, and I'm just making up a number. 1,500 can be any number. 1 or 2 or 3 subfolders, and within those you can keep going and cascading down and down and down. So in its most basic form, we've shared one folder on the desktop. Didn't have to be on the desktop. It could be anywhere on the system, but you don't want to share system folders. I don't even think Windows allows you to share your Windows folder. You'd be foolish to share your Windows folder. So anyway, let's go to full screen over here so I can see it. And I'll take my mouse, and again, we're on this machine, and let's see if we see the shared folder over here. Double click. Now it says Windows cannot access it. So now we see it where we weren't seeing it before. And that does seem to be related to restarting the router with the firmware update. I don't know why. A lot of times when we're doing this networking stuff, when we restart things and it just fixes it, we don't need to know why, unless it's a problem that continues to happen. When a problem continues to happen, that's really easy to diagnose. That means every single time I click on MSO1, I always get the same error. Okay, what that suggests to me is I might need those Windows 11 fixes I talked about that do our guest fallback sign-in. And what that requires is me running PowerShell with these 2 commands here. And this is explained in a different video, and this is a security thing that was introduced in Windows 11 24H2. Again, you should only have to do this once. I'm just going to right-click on this command and choose to copy it. I'm going to open PowerShell. See where it says PowerShell here, and then there's an arrow to the right. Run as administrator. Hoping my camera's not covering any of this up. And it opens what looks like a command box. I'm going to Control V to paste that command in and hit enter. Then it's going to ask me for confirmation. And I'm going to click yes or Y for yes. The second thing I do is this other command, and this is all explained in my other video. This is disabling guest fallback, or rather, we want to make sure that guest fallback is on or true. True is on or enabled. So let's come back over here. Control V to paste that, enter, yes, and just exit this. And we can close this out. Now when I click on this, I can see it. Isn't that incredible? I didn't even have to reboot. Now if I even want to run CPU-Z remotely from the MSO1, I click on that executable, click yes, and I didn't even have to copy the files over. So what about the other way around? Now that we've got this working in one direction, we're good to go. Everything works here. Let's switch back over to the MSO1 and see if we can see it the other way now. So I'll unplug my HDMI cable from the 1250 there, plug it into the MSO1. Once again, I need a keyboard and a mouse, and so we'll take that and plug it in up here. just like that. Let's go to our yellow folder and let's see if we see the UN1250 under network. And give it a minute, right? There's the UN1250, double click. There's my shared stuff. Remember the folder we shared earlier, and within that, we have all these other folders that we can access. Now, for some of you, you might have said, well, that was a lot of process. But it's a lot of security. We're getting past firewalls, router settings, making sure drivers are updated, the router is updated. By the way, this is all stuff you should have been doing all along, and because it never affected you, you just never occurred to you to do it. If I was the IT guy at a company that you run, I would be doing this all the time, regardless if you say anything is wrong, because it's the way it's supposed to be set up and maintained. As I mentioned, once you update this, you don't have to reconfigure it. However, you should still be getting driver updates. You should still be getting firmware updates for the router. You should still be checking for those updates on a somewhat regular basis, at least twice a year. And that way it keeps everything running. Instead of just saying, well, I've set it once and I never have to set it again. That's true as far as configuration goes. But then there's maintenance. Configuration is not maintenance. Maintenance is not configuration. And what I just showed you here was both. We did both maintenance and configuration. And the reason why that's an important distinction is a lot of people will say, here's how you set up networking in Windows, and they just do the configuration. And then you do it at home, and it doesn't work for you, just like it didn't work for us. And then suddenly, when we got our updates, including the router, whatever this wanted, I don't know, make sure all your updates are in there. If you continue to have problems, that's when you start updating network card drivers. If it's a network card made by Realtek, go to realtek.com. If it's Intel, do a Google search for that Intel card driver. That's leading you to Intel.com's website, not anybody else's. Or if you bought a motherboard from Asus or ASRock or MSI or Gigabyte, if you just want to play it safe, go to that motherboard support page and get the driver from the motherboard manufacturer for the network card that's built in, whether it's wireless or Wi-Fi or both. This helps your security. Everything will work a lot smoother. Again, they're not paying developers an annual salary to sit around and refine code when there's other things that could be done that earns them money. Updating the drivers doesn't earn them any money. It costs them lots of money. It's not like they just write it and send it out. It all has to go through research and testing, quality control, and then release. It's very, very expensive. So if they're releasing that update that they just invested all this money in developing and testing, you should have no hesitation in grabbing that. The people that say, well, these updates, they're breaking my computer. No, you're breaking your computer. You're the thing that needs to be updated. Once you start following these rules, all the problems go away. Most of the problems go away because you're now being proactive. It wouldn't even hurt you to update your card driver now. Even if you're not having any problems at all, I'll bet you 90% of the viewers are running old network card drivers. You want to see? Let's look at the MSO1. This is the oldest, and besides, it's already hooked up. Let's go back and let's just put our money where our mouth is, okay? Even though we're not having any problems, if you're looking for a way to tune up your computer, if you're somebody who's just bored looking for some way you can make your computer better, my advice to you is don't mess around in your registry. Don't follow these tips about disabling services. Don't do it. These will come back to bite you in the butt. But when it comes to like your networking, especially if you want to share files, or you're on the internet regularly, as most of us are, and you want to make sure you've got the best connection possible, especially with Wi-Fi, the driver can make an improvement in your signal strength and reliability of your wireless connection. If you're wired, it's also possible that it not only enhances the security of the wired Ethernet data transmission, but also could resolve any file sharing problems. Even if you're not file sharing today, but you decide you want to file share a year from now, at least your driver is much more recent and less likely that that becomes an issue when you're trying to get it working. So proactive. Worst case scenario, you put the driver in and all hell breaks loose, just uninstall the driver. Don't pay money for drivers. Drivers come with the product direct from the manufacturer. Otherwise, you're being taken advantage of. Any driver installers, anything that costs money for drivers is taking you to the cleaners. Now, let me go back over here. Let's go to, this is camera 2. And let's take a look at our device manager. Now remember, this gets more complicated because we have 5 network cards in this computer. If I come down here to the Start menu and go to Device Manager, everything's alphabetized. We're going to go to the letter N, like network, and look at, we've got our Ethernet controller. Oh, it's 2 2.5s. Our first 2.5 LAN, second 2.5 LAN. We've got a converged network adapter. That is the SFP Plus, the first one. That's the FSP Plus, the second one. This is our wireless Wi-Fi 6E. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. So I'm only using one of them. And the one I'm using right now, which one is it? Well, here's an easy way to tell. I'm going to just give you the basic. Like, I don't know which switch controls which light bulb. Turn the switch off. You'll find out real quick. You don't need to get a wire tracing set and find continuity to figure it out. So if I right-click on this controller, because I know it's this one or this one, I'm not on the SFPs and I'm not on the Wi-Fi. So I'm on this one or this one. How can I tell? Right-click, and this isn't the only way, but let's just disable it. Now let's see, does our little screen go to a little disconnect? It does not. So let's turn that one, let's turn this one off, the dash V one, right-click, disable it, and let's see, after we disable it, if our little screen down in the corner becomes a globe. So gee, I wonder which one we're using. So that tells me we're using the dash V. So let's turn that back on, right-click, and enable device. And then we should see that little globe down in the right corner become a monitor again. That's how I know which connector I'm on without breaking out a fluke tester or wasting my time with all this tech minutia that doesn't really matter when all you got to do is flip a switch to see which light bulb turns on and off. Life is simple if you keep it so, and many of the computer-related types of upgrades and repairs I have to do. Don't need specialty tools for this. Now, the reason I want to know which adapter I'm on is to just give you an example in real life, live and unscripted, about driver version. And when I right-click that, it says update driver, but that's asking Microsoft if they have a new driver. Well, if they did, don't you think they would have offered it to me? So this is a waste of time, in my opinion. I want to go to the properties of this particular device, and under the driver tab, I want to see the date and the version. Now we know the name is Intel Ethernet Controller i226V. So I just, using the same computer, type in, guess what? Intel i226V driver, enter. I don't even care if you're using Intel's driver updater, because sometimes it's not offering you the latest drivers for things like Wi-Fi and Ethernet. And you'll see we're going to go to Intel.com. We're not going to Major Geeks. We're not going to Microsoft or Reddit. We're going to go to Download Drivers and Software at Intel. And we're looking for the i22V driver. Now what's interesting is it didn't specifically take us there. So again, we can go back and refine the search, or we can just say, okay, well, this is the auto driver updater we've shown before, but let's just go to Ethernet products. And now you're going to see every Ethernet product Intel's ever made, which is a long list. So we can search by, let's see, can I refine that? Wow, there's a lot of stuff. So this says there are gigabit Ethernet controllers up to 2.5 gig here and here. I don't know what the difference is. I'm going to just pick one and see if the i226V is in here. This is a complete adapter driver pack. In other words, this is a giant file that installs version 29.5 that supports more or less all of those Ethernet drivers from Intel that are 1 or 2.5 gig. And it's probably pretty big. It was released just a couple of weeks ago, which is obviously much newer than what we have. But that doesn't mean every single driver it contains in this package all have been updated. So let's just click on that. This is probably pretty big. Yeah, 826 megs, because it contains the drivers for about 100 different video Ethernet adapters that Intel has made. But 29.5, we have a fast connection, so rather than just get the specific Intel driver, let's just grab all of them in a package, and it will auto-detect which of that batch we have and apply the driver automatically. That's how Intel does it. Okay, that's one way Intel does it. We could also go to Minisforum and download the driver from them, but I know the Intel driver is going to be newer because Minisforum doesn't necessarily stay up to date on the latest unless there's a reason to. Their reason and my reason are different. I want to be proactive. They just want to make sure everything works without potentially breaking anything, so they're on a better safe than sorry, which is very different than my better safe than sorry. Now remember, we're still connected up through this little travel router, so my connection speed is going to be a little bit hindered because this is not a 2.5 gig connection on my portable router. So I'm moving it around half speed right now since I hooked this up to demonstrate networking. And since we're still talking about networking, I'm leaving it hooked up this way just as part of the overall demonstration. In most cases, when you do this, you, the human being, won't notice any difference from one version of the driver to another. You shouldn't. Shouldn't be any better, shouldn't be any worse. Just because you don't experience any difference doesn't mean you're not more secure or that your connection's a little bit faster or even more reliable. It may not be something you notice. On the other hand, if you're having networking issues, this could resolve it. Or if you're not having network issues, it may be because you already have a newer driver installed. Therefore, you never had to have that bad experience because this is being proactive. So we're going to open up the zip file, and inside of it, there should be some kind of a setup or an executable file that's going to take care of all this for us. So once again, looking in the device manager at this i226V, we are running 2.1.3.15. Okay, I want you to remember that, because this is telling us up here it could be 2.9.5. It says 29. It could be a completely different driver version because Intel labels drivers differently than the manufacturers do. So that's why we want to make sure, regardless of where the driver came from, Windows Update, we want to just maybe look at the date. So if nothing else, remember June 29th of 2023. Close that out. Now this is the inside of that zip file, which we need to extract all of this, and we'll just extract it in our downloads folder. That's fine. Now I would need to do this for all of the network adapters. So if one's made by Realtek, if one is made by MediaTek, we'd have to go to those different companies to get those drivers. The advantage where Intel puts all of these 1 and 2.5 gig network card drivers together in one giant package is the other 4 network adapters I have, if they're made by Intel, will automatically be updated as well because those drivers may be in this package. So then in that case, that saves me time. But I'm only using one network driver or one network card anyway. So if I'm not using the network card, the driver version doesn't really matter. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to use it in 2 months from now. And then I'm going to have to diagnose a problem because I didn't do this. So what I'm looking for is some sort of an executable file here. And I don't see anything at all. This is when I was not expecting this. So what I would do next is simply close these out, go back to my start button, right click back to the device manager, right back where we were. Under the i226V, when I go into the driver, click update the driver, say to browse my computer for the driver, and then point it to my downloads directory where I just extracted release 29.5. and it will automatically search through all the subfolders. And it's installing. It found something newer and it's applied it. Close, and now our driver is from February 20th, 2024, and it's driver version 2.1.4.3. You say, well, did it say 29.5? Because it is a massive compilation of drivers from Intel, that's the version of the compilation. And that probably gets its number from the highest version of the latest driver in that package. Remember, Intel makes multiple different network cards. So if you want to specifically get only the driver for the network card you have, we could have searched for that and found it. But I was being lazy. I said, there's a big compilation of drivers from Intel. It's official. It's free. It's real. I was expecting an executable. We didn't have it. That's okay. Just go into the driver manager or device manager and update it. We can do the same thing over here. Double click on this one. We can enable it. That's fine. Finish. Now, which driver do we have here from Intel? This one, again, we're back to 6/29/2023, June 29th, driver version 2.1.3.15. This is interesting because, again, when Microsoft provides the drivers to you, their driver numbers can be a whole different series of numbers. It's very convoluted. That's why sometimes you might say, well, when I use the Intel driver updater, it tells me I need a new graphics driver, but Windows Update then says I need a new graphics driver. It's the same driver. Intel has to have their own numbering scheme to prevent confusing on their side, and Intel has their own version numbering scheme to prevent confusion on their side. They don't want to adapt Microsoft's numbering system, and Microsoft doesn't want to adapt their numbering system. Otherwise, you run into all kinds of confusion where Microsoft says, well, we number it this way for Intel, but we number it this other way for Realtek. If you were Microsoft, you'd understand you really don't have any choice here. And this can get really confusing. So 2.3.15, let's do the same thing. Update driver, browse for the driver, and remembers our last place we looked. We're going to look in the same place for this other driver. It is in that big package. It's installed. And now when we go back and look, we're 2.1.4.3. So that is, in this example, the numbers follow in that they're larger. But don't be thrown if the number's smaller. That's why that happens. You just want to make sure the date is newer. Now, did that make any difference in our networking? Probably made none whatsoever that we're aware of, but that doesn't mean it didn't make it more secure, more reliable. And again, if we go to this computer, back over to network, we should still be able to see the UN1250 and, of course, the shared folder within. All right, so is networking really that complex? Once this is set up, we never have to do that ever again. And, sharing future folders is already just right-click and share and give the permissions. That's it. You've got all the hard work behind you, and it'll stay that way indefinitely. Just keep it maintained. Okay. Now, what that has to do with a dual screen monitor, I have no idea. But I just felt like we didn't have enough content to cover as much as I wanted to cover today. This is a relatively simple and straightforward device. I don't think it requires a lot of discussion. Again, if I unplug my capture card and we'll plug this monitor back into the USB Type-C. In fact, you know what? Let's type, we never did check it on this one, but I'll bet you using the right cable now that this works. Let's see if we get something up here. Again, that's the monitor coming on. And there's our desktop. Because remember, I never did get this desktop on display without the HDMI cable. And that's because I was using the wrong USB-C cable that was power delivery only. And it even had a sticker on it. But again, I would prefer that that cable was a different color. In networking, we used to have something called crossover cables. They look like any other patch cable, but they were almost always universally yellow from top to bottom. And you knew immediately if you see a yellow network cable, that's not a regular network cable. Now these days, switches and network routers have evolved to such a point where they auto-convert them anyway. But back in the day, this would prevent a network from working. You walk into the wiring closet and you see a yellow cable, you go, well, what moron put a crossover cable in here? If the crossover cable was blue like everything else or black like everything else, then you'd have to physically pull the cable and look at the wiring through the clear connector and see if it's all in the right order, because a crossover cable crosses over two pairs of wires, or you'd have to test each cable, both ends. Anyway, things have gotten a lot easier. That's why I say, if you think networking's hard today, you should have tried networking 10 base 2 so you and your friends can play Duke Nukem 3D in your house with 3 computers. You needed terminators, you needed these round coaxial network cables. But, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And I was highly motivated to figure out how to make that network work so my friends and I can all play together. This was before the internet. We would all play together in the house. I had a computer in this bedroom, a computer in that bedroom, a computer in the kitchen, and I just ran the cables across the floor, got the computers networked, figured out how 10 base 2 works. We played Duke Nukem. My friends went home. I unplugged and wrapped up the cables and call it a day. Nowadays, the friends don't even have to come over. You just get on Steam and you're done. Click, click. Networking is super easy today, but it's also super easy to break into other people's computers and steal their stuff without them even knowing you were ever there. One goes hand in hand with the other. All right, I haven't been paying attention to the chat, so we've got a few minutes left, and I'll address any other questions. I haven't been watching, so if you've asked something and I have not addressed it, it's because I haven't seen it. So please repost your question. And again, I want to shout out our friends at Minisforum for sending us this unit. It's a very unique product. There's not a lot of competition in the market because there's not much choice you'd have if you needed a portable dual screen other than buying 2 monitors. And this makes it much more portable. 1 cable, has speakers, it's 1080, it's not touchscreen. I hate touchscreens unless it's a tablet or a cell phone. I don't, give me a keyboard. So all that stuff adds up. A touchscreen costs more money. So why do I want to pay more for something I personally don't want? You can bring the price down and take away the touchscreen, sign me up. But that's just my personal preference. But for those of you who want the touchscreen, that's not what this is. On a Microsoft Surface for ARM, for an ARM processor, there's no place to look for drivers. The only place to look for drivers is in Windows updates, so I just use Windows updates. I don't have a lot of experience with the operating system of, rather with the ARM CPUs on a Windows platform. In general, you would still go to Intel or whoever makes your sound card or whoever makes your network card and look for ARM drivers. I don't know yet if Intel makes them directly available, but we can take a look. So there's a couple things. One, if you have an ARM-based laptop, chances are you bought it within the last 8 or 10 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. That means the drivers on that laptop, since there's really never been this Snapdragon processor. ARM has had other Windows-based CPUs, but I don't think they use the same drivers. If you've got a brand new computer, and when I say brand new, it's under a year old, you shouldn't have any problem with any drivers. That's it. Maybe GPU. That's it. And even then, that depends on the game you're playing. But you would go directly to the manufacturer, in this case of the network card, and you would look to see if an ARM driver is available. If it's not available today, that doesn't mean it won't be in the future. But because ARM CPUs, at least the Snapdragon processors, the ones that we're talking about today, they're brand new, there may not be any new drivers yet. But when I'm talking to a general audience around the world, some of the folks watching might be using a computer that's over 10 years old. Some of these computers that our viewers are using are 4 and 5 years old, 3 years old. They're well out of date if they've never been maintained. So perhaps I make an assumption that the likelihood of you having a computer under a year old while you're watching our YouTube videos is far less likely. I don't really think about addressing if your computer is brand new. So I appreciate that you brought that up, because there are going to be a handful of viewers that have brand new computers and say, well, I don't know what he's talking about. My drivers are up to date. Well, that's because you just got your computer. But as your computer ages, this becomes more and more important. Because the ARM processor on Windows, this new Snapdragon processor, is so new, companies are still trying to even determine whether or not they're selling enough to make it worthwhile to make it. This whole thing could be a fad and goes away, or it may be everybody has to have one. And depending on what happens, you'll start seeing more or less support accordingly with regards to driver versions being available direct from manufacturers, the same as they are for Windows. So just because it's not there today doesn't mean it won't be there tomorrow. And in the meantime, yes, you would rely on Windows Update. And then if you're having a problem, then come on in here and we'll help you with it. Just let us know what the problem is, because it may not be a driver-related problem. But as far as any maintenance and upkeep goes, then at the very least you continue to use Windows Update, and just periodically check the manufacturers, twice a year, and see if the ARM drivers are available. Is anybody here in the chat room using an ARM-based processor other than William Lynn? I just want to prove a point or be proven wrong. I try to make the videos in general for the worldwide audience and what I believe is going to apply to the greatest mass of people. Just like when I run my business, I avoid niche businesses that need specialized support, because then I have to go through all this training and familiarity with hardware or software, and I won't do that for one client, right? If I'm going to do that, I might as well make sure all my clients do this. So in other words, if I wanted to be like an ARM-based tech, then I would just do ARM. But for right now, and by the way, that's a possibility. That could happen. But for right now, ARM is still a niche product, and it hasn't really taken off in the way, there was a lot of hype from Qualcomm about it. We'll see how it develops. I like it, don't get me wrong. I just don't see them out in the wild. FM Lazar has an ARM. Okay, so we have 2 ARM-based users. William Lynn said there's no place on the Qualcomm website. Well, does Qualcomm make the sound card, and does Qualcomm make the network card? It'd be like going to the Intel CPU manufacturer to get the drivers from my Realtek sound card or my MediaTek Wi-Fi card. I'm not going to find them on the CPU maker. So I don't know why you're looking at Qualcomm. But again, I haven't looked at the drivers on my ARM laptop, but I will tell you, at this time, Samsung update on the Galaxy Book 4 Edge with the ARM processor says we do not provide updates. Whereas if you had an Intel or AMD based laptop, I think Samsung only makes Intel based. Now that I think about it. But they have something, and Dell has something. HP has HP Update, Dell Update, and these provide firmware updates, driver updates, everything right from the manufacturer. Samsung does the same thing, except on the ARM processor. Samsung says Samsung Update will not work on this laptop, and that you will get all your drivers through Windows Update. But I don't know that it's going to stay that way. It depends on the development, right? Samsung doesn't want to spend the money and create a whole department of employees that costs millions of dollars a year for a product that isn't selling that well. So in that case, they're saying, we'll let Microsoft handle it, and if this thing grows and gets bigger, then we'll put Samsung Update on it. That's what I imagine the logic is. But Samsung makes it very, very clear. You will get all of your driver updates in Windows Update. Now, I don't know if Microsoft follows the same process, but even a Microsoft Surface did have a Microsoft Update besides Windows Update. But when you're dealing with the ARM processors, there's a certain investment the companies have made, and there's no guarantee that that investment isn't flushing money down the toilet yet. They start making a profit, they'll start putting more money into it. And that's what I suspect is happening. But I don't know who makes the network card on your Surface. I don't know who makes the sound card on your Surface. But in the case of my Samsung ARM-based processor, it wouldn't matter. Samsung says you get your drivers through Windows Update only. But I don't know that that's permanent. It's just, let's see how it goes. That's what I think is the logic here. FM Lazar says, anyone using a modern Mac? Well, there's nothing like coming onto a Windows-based tech channel and asking if people are using Mac or Linux. There are channels for Mac or Linux, and you might as well jump into them and ask them if anybody's using Windows. We are a Windows-based business. And when I turn my cameras on to show you my business, everything's going to be Windows-based because that's where all my experience is. It's not a personal grievance. It's just, this is how I make my money. And so for that matter, my intention is to draw in others who can share from the knowledge that I have in this industry. So if they're Mac or Linux users, there's really nothing here for them in that way. So if there are Mac and Linux users, it's not like they're not welcome, but we don't make any content for them. Andy Kane's asking about 586A to 586B. These are the wiring standards. A crossover cable would be reversing the transmission and receive lines. So I don't know that 586A and B do that. It's a different transmission standard, but I'd have to look at the wiring to see if one's A on one side and B on the other, or if it's something else to do with like usually when I wire, and I don't even make my own Ethernet cables, but if I'm wiring a Keystone jack or something, I'll almost always choose 586B. You know, you start with the, what is it, orange, white, blue, green, white, green. No. Green, blue, white, I can't remember. But I can't remember if 586B and A simply change a couple of the wires, or do they make the transmit and receive opposites? I can't remember. But again, that doesn't matter anymore because this modern day switches and routers automatically sense that and accommodate. Just like you used to need plugs for 220 volts versus different plugs for 200, well, not plugs, but on the back of a computer power supply in the 90s, you had a recessed switch for 110 volts versus 220. And if you didn't move that switch and you were on 220 and it was set to 110, smoke would come out. These days, the power supply is auto sense, so just the physical plug changes. So the plug in Europe plugs in to the wall differently than the plug in the US. And if 220 volts is coming out of that European plug and 110 is coming out of the American plug, the power supply auto switches. It just sees what's coming in. It does it automatically, taking that option away from the human who's going to screw it up. So this is just another way technology has advanced over the years that is really, not oversimplified, but really simplified the complexities of computers, especially in international travel and shipping. Just these adapters themselves are also auto switching. They'll sense 220 coming in and switch. Many of them do. But 20 years ago, different. Okay, let's see any other questions that we can address. Aka Cameron said, I missed this entire stream. Not to worry, it's always available for playback once it ends. And let me just scroll back through the chat here. Wayne Ellison says it's cold here in Texas. Planet Cryos had contributed $5 earlier in Super Chat. Sorry, I just saw this. He says, I don't know if you did yet, but don't forget about the changes in the edit group policy needed. Oh, so the alternate to changing the group policy, the way I showed it, was just using those PowerShell commands. Same thing. It's a little quicker and dirtier, so it's been my preference. That's how I do it now. I'm planning on integrating that into the Windows 11 optimizer as well. I still have to, I haven't talked to Nick in about 2 months. I need to talk to Nick and figure out if he's still interested in doing it or if I need to find someone else to do it. I was hoping he would be hungry and would reach out to me. But, you know, I don't know what's going on in his life. He could have a lot of other things going on. Or he could have just forgot. So I need to just kind of nudge him a little bit and say, hey, are we doing this? And I'll give you guys updates because we have a lot more to add to it than just those two little PowerShell commands. But we're going to be at least 6 months out, just so you know. Likely that tool won't become available before Windows 10 support ends. So we'll probably see it at the end of this year, would be my guess. Takes a lot of testing. Testing, polishing, retesting, repolishing, compiling, optimizing. That's how we can get it really, really small, make it a quick download, make it super reliable. It's not like he just writes it and sends it out. Wouldn't that be great? There's Michael Lavelle saying hello. Oh, speaking of Planet Cryos, he recently showed a video of adding a 10 gig networking card internally into his desktop computer. Now, almost universally, these 10 gig networking cards are made by a company that most of you probably never heard of because they make more enterprise business corporate stuff. And they're called Marvell. I know it looks like Marvel. Pronounced Marvell. And almost universally, if you have a 10 gig Ethernet adapter, it's made by Marvell. And you would go to Marvell, regardless of who makes the card, to download that driver. But what I wanted to show you is something you cannot really buy here in the United States. You have to go to like AliExpress. But it's pretty neat. This company called IOCrest makes a Thunderbolt USB 4 external USB 10 gig Ethernet adapter for about $100. Now, the first thing you need to know about 10 gig is it gets hot. But what's great about it is we can take a standard USB 4, Thunderbolt 4, or even Thunderbolt 3 USB Type-C cable. It has to be relatively short. We're moving a lot of data through here, and the longer the cable is, the more likelihood you get some loss in the transmission. And you plug that in right here. Now, this was picked up from AliExpress, so it sort of circumvents all of the FCC requirements and whatnot, which is likely why it's not available for sale here at places like Amazon and Newegg. As far as I know, at least it used to not be. And then we would plug that into a USB port that again has to be USB 4 or Thunderbolt, preferably Thunderbolt 4, but Thunderbolt 3 should work as well. And typically drivers do not auto-install. You would have to then go to the manufacturer's website, but all they're going to do is provide you with Marvell's driver, so why not just go to Marvell, download the driver, plug your Ethernet cable in, and stay clear of this because it's going to get really, really super hot, and that's normal for all 10 gig Ethernet networking. But a lot of Americans and perhaps a lot of Europeans don't know this is available yet. And I haven't had a lot of time to test it, but what I have done routinely, just checked it. It's 10 gig, it gets hot. And, you know, if you look on Amazon for like Thunderbolt 3 10 gig adapters, they're $200 and $300. So for $100 off AliExpress, I thought I'd risk it. And yeah, it seems to work quite well. Of course, this does require that you have an SSD that can keep up with it, along with a network switch that's 10 gig. And, you know, if you've got a NAS, you'd want to upgrade the NAS to 10 gig or replace the NAS if it's not upgradable. And then all your file transfer speeds move much, much faster. When I do gigabit, I get about 113 megs a second. If I do 2.5 gig, you can about double that, 230 megabytes per second. And there's 5 gig. Again, you'll get to about 500, 550 megabytes per second. And then you go to 10 gig, and that can do 1,000 megabytes per second, providing everything connected in that chain is capable of those speeds. Now, I don't know what the heck you're copying and how often you're copying it to justify all this expense, but just as a matter of fact, just know it's an option to consider. And regardless of the fact it came from AliExpress and likely has no warranty, I don't know how I would activate the warranty. It's a solid state piece of electronics. It's going to work or not. So usually if you plug it in and it works, it's going to work indefinitely unless you damage it by spilling something on it or mistreating it. So that's why I have the confidence in making that purchase. Planet Cryo says, with a $2 super chat, it'll be 0 degrees here tonight in upstate New York. Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty normal, doesn't it? Andy Kane says, I like the way you shared the folders on the network. Easy steps to follow. I'm glad that it all didn't work seamlessly the first time I tried, because it probably won't. So the fact that we ran into so many obstacles in the diagnostic technique was a great opportunity for me to show you my thought process and how you always start with the simple things first. Don't overthink it. I do find that a lot of people online that reach out to us fall on one side or the other. They either oversimplify because they don't understand the complexity of what they're dealing with, or they overthink something that's really simple. But right down the middle is where I want you to be. I don't want you to be so self-confident that you're like, well, this is really super simple. No, if it was, you wouldn't be having the problem. So it means we have a comprehension problem. It's not the technology. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of the person and the technology. And if that person won't learn anymore because they're already convinced it's something wrong over here, they're very difficult to help those people. But likewise, when they swing to the extreme other side, which is they're trying to think of some complex way to solve the easiest problem, that drives me crazy as well, because that is taking something simple and making it way more complicated, and it can create all kinds of new problems. So what we're looking for is to get right down the middle, make sure you remain uncertain, right? If you're stuck trying to solve something and you're coming up with a solution, ask yourself, is this the easiest thing to try first? And if you've tried to come up with solutions and can't fix it, stop blaming the tech and ask us, hey, I've tried this, I've tried that. Have I missed anything? Don't say, I haven't missed anything. I did everything right. You're going to be a very difficult person to teach. Come into it more humble. Say, look, maybe there's something wrong with this, or maybe I did something wrong. You can tell us what you think. I think there's something wrong with it. That's fine. But what does that have to do with anything? All you're asking for is a second opinion. Do I agree that the tech is wrong and you're right? Or do I disagree that you are absolutely seeing it wrong and going about repairing it or resolving the issue completely wrong? Now we can help you, right? Verify, verify, verify. If you're coming to a conclusion, well, I had this hard drive and the data just vanished one day or became corrupted, so therefore that's what happens when hard drives sit. That's not how facts work. But feel free to ask, could that have been a problem? Maybe, but without any verification, we're guessing just as much as you're guessing. And guessing is okay, but you could say, I'm guessing. Because if you don't say that, people who look up to you think you're telling them fact. And then they tell it to people that look up to them. And then we're stuck here in a world of misinformation. So we're here to help you. But we're always going to emphasize, and you can predict it. If you come in and ask for a question, we're always going to ask you simple things. Because 9 times out of 10, that's your solution. And you're either overthinking it right? You're making it far more complicated than it needs to be. Or you're oversimplifying something very complex, like the network. It's simple, but it's complex. So we always check the simple things, like a network cable. You're sitting there beating your head against the wall, editing your registry, and I'm like, why didn't you just change the network cable? Or why didn't you just unplug the router and plug it back in before you went through all this effort? Because in my line of work, we can lose our jobs if we take too long to fix things. You work for corporate IT, and you're going to be expected to do a certain number of calls every day to justify why they're paying you. And if you don't get those calls right, and you have to keep over and over going back to the same call, look, we all do that sometimes. But if that's like a regular thing for you, but nobody else on your team has to go back that often, you're probably going to lose your job. So for the sake of your own sanity, but for that of customer service, and as well as to remain productive, keep checking the easy things first. And if you can't think of easy things, ask us. We'll present you with easy things to check. And then, if required, based on the response on those easy things, only then can we decide step by step how complex we get. Editing a registry is going to be one of the last things we have you do. So that's pretty extreme. All right. With that, I want to remind you, if you do have questions, we do have a forum. And that is at carrieholzman.boards.net, not .com, .net. So Carrie Holzman, in fact, let me share my screen with you so you can see. Right here. carrieholzman.boards.net is what I'll type in and hit enter. And this is our forum. It's completely free. We have no intention to monetize this. Sign up, create a free account, go ahead and register here. We're not asking you for, any credit card information or anything like that. We're trying to encourage community interaction when we're not live, or even while we are live, anytime, 24/7, holidays, whatever, doesn't matter. The board is up 24/7, and you go into our general discussions here, and you can create your own thread, answer somebody else's thread, and communicate with one another. You can start by just creating a new thread, introducing yourself. Tell us who you are. Maybe include a picture of your face so we can see what you look like, if you want to, and if you're comfortable with it. We don't have to know personal information, but if you say, hey, here, from Hawaii, that's cool. I'm from Pittsburgh. Cool. Sort of generic info that helps us to get to know you. Maybe tell us what your interest in computers is in, or how you got interested in it, what you have now. And just let the natural flow of conversation occur as we all help each other. So I will pop in from time to time, but I also want to encourage you guys, if somebody's asking a question and you know the answer, please provide it. If I don't agree with it, I'll say as much, but I don't want you to be discouraged. Just provide your answer, because more times than not, you guys do have the right answers, and you save me having to do the work, and you help each other out, and that's what this community is all about. So we'd love to see you get signed up. It's completely free. Just click register. Very simple sign-up process. And we'd love to see you in there. My thanks, of course, to Mara for all the work she does in the background and all the administrative tasks of running this channel, from the thumbnails, the video descriptions, working out arrangements with hardware manufacturers for us to review, or in this case, setting up the whole forum. She's done that all from scratch. That's all her. And if you guys email us, our email address is right here on the screen. So if you want to reach out, she also handles all the incoming email and will get me involved when necessary. And this frees me up to do all the other stuff around here. It takes a huge burden off my shoulders. So feel free to reach out anytime. But again, that's to us personally. Really would encourage you guys to interact with each other in our forums if you haven't already. And showcasecreate@gmail.com. Make sure you spell it correctly. And we respond to all emails within 24 hours. So if you don't get a response, we didn't get your email. Double check who you sent it to. Inverting letters is pretty common, especially if you're not spell checking and you're in a hurry. And then ultimately it's going to make it take longer for you to get a response. So Haste makes waste, as they say. A shout out and a thank you once again to our friends at Minisforum for sending us the dual screen portable monitor to evaluate. I think it's a pretty straightforward device. Little confusion with regards to the power cable versus the data cable. That's the worst of it. Button on the side makes it easy to switch modes, and it's easy to figure out, you know, if you don't have USB-C, that you could just run it like any other monitor, only it's portable. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. A shout out and a thank you once again for the contributions for the Amazon gift cards from Anna Lindos and, of course, our friend Mark Gaines. And thank you to everybody who gave us contributions in Super Chat as well. Tomorrow is Members Only Mondays. We always broadcast every Monday privately for viewers only to interact with us. It's a much smaller turnout. It's more intimate, more informal, and it gives you a little bit about behind the scenes, what we're working on, what's coming up that week. Is also more of my personal time to each individual in the chat. We do public videos. The public videos get thousands of views. The members only videos only get a couple hundred of views. And that way, those people who support us by being members also in return get more of my attention and my time, so that we reciprocate, right? They're giving more, I'm giving more back. We'd encourage you, if you've not, to sign up for our membership, because that keeps us sponsor free. So we don't have any corporation to be beholden to that's going to tell us what we can say or can't say or when we have to say it. I never want to do that. There are companies I would work with, okay, but I don't want the company to tell me what I have to say. At that point, I've just become an enthusiast channel from my perspective that's paying for it. So like the big enthusiast channels, they got scripts, they got editing, and the money's flowing because all that costs money. We're a much lower budget, more down-to-earth place where we keep everything as real, as genuine as possible, so we can share these experiences, my mistake and understandings, we share them together so that you will have different mistakes and misunderstandings. I can't prevent them from happening, but at least you won't have the same ones I have. And that's the whole reason for it. And of course, primarily the community here, which is so amazing. Thank you guys so much for being the people you are. Kind, supportive, and just a pleasure to have here as my guest. And, you know, for myself and the members, this really is our channel. And I want to emphasize that. The people who make this possible, it's their channel too. And if you guys have any concerns or suggestions, please email them to us or put it in the forum. And if it's something that's within our wheelhouse that we can do, well, we certainly appreciate the thought. In the meantime, I hope to see all the members tomorrow, 1 o'clock Phoenix time, as always. And until next time, bye for now.